116 Yada Yahowah, Qatsyr, harvests. 3. Shabuw'ah, 7 sevens. Unfulfilled Accounting. It is with considerable trepidation that we venture into the pages of the Christian New Testament once again. And yet, Shimon's alleged accounting of the fulfillment of Shabuw'ah in 33c as it was scribed by Luke in the book of Acts may be worth the risk because it is so demonstrative of religious corruption. Had there actually been disciples, had any of their stories been true, one would have expected that having lived alongside the Zarahua for 3 years and having been in Yerushalayim during Daud's fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, Shimon they would have been prepared by the first 3 Mikrei to capitalize upon the 4th, Shabuw'ah. The alleged witness had been in the right place at the right time and, therefore, should have been able to articulate an accurate accounting. Had he been paying attention, he should have been a beneficiary of Passover, unyeasted bread, and firstborn children and, thus, enlightened by the process and empowered by the Spirit, causing him to be an especially effective witness. If only? In the opening line of the 2nd chapter of the book of Acts, it appears as if the Mikra of Shabuw'ah, like the 3 preceding it, was fulfilled in accordance with Yahweh's Torah instructions. Other than the Greek title replacing Yahweh's Hebrew nomenclature, the initial sentence serves to make this point. 117 This known, we are painfully aware that Acts, like the Gospel of Luke, is a work of fiction, overwhelmingly more wrong than right. Neither book was inspired by God or the facts. However, since they are considered scripture by billions, these books, which were scribed at the conclusion of the lifetimes of Paul's associates, are seldom scrutinized as we are doing. And that is a shame because it becomes immediately obvious to an informed and rational reader that they were agenda-driven and, more specifically, heavily influenced by Paul, the plague of death. Moreover, the resulting message has haunted God's people for centuries. The viability issue becomes readily apparent within either the Book of Acts or the Gospel of Luke because both are riddled with inaccuracies, fallacies, and, worse, antisemitism. It is only because the first 7 chapters of Acts present events and discussions apart from Paul, and purport to convey the testimony of a disciple, that any of this is being conveyed for your consideration, and also because excoriating a religion born out of a hatred of Jews is important to the security of God's people. With this in mind, the 2nd chapter of Acts begins. Indeed, the day, Himera, of 50, Pentecost, feminine form of Penteconta, meaning 50, it was fulfilled, Sumplaru, was fully completed. It came to exist, Amy, that all were assembled in harmony, Pahomu, everyone was like-minded, like-natured, and unified in an assembly, in the presence of, Epi, it, Auto. Acts 2:1. I may be the first to share the bad news. This is an inaccurate portrayal of Shabuw'ah. God has invited everyone to attend, such that those gathered on this day would be exceedingly diverse in their situations, perspectives, attitudes, and thinking. They would not be in 118 harmony or like-minded if they were celebrating the mode according to Yahweh's Torah guidance. And immediately, there came into existence, Ginomai out of, heaven, Oranos, the sound of information and news echoes of a spoken report, like, Hosper, corresponding to, a compelling force, Biaz, a powerful source of energy, moving inwardly and upholding, for Ome, the breath of spiritual life, Pen, feminine derivative of pneuma spirit, and filling, Plaru, supplying, the whole, hollows, household, Oikon, where, they were residing. Acts 2:2. I have had the opportunity to spend the past 22 years of my life, aided by the Ruach Kodesh. As we have discovered when pondering the implications of Yahweh's prophets, particularly Moses, Daud, Solomon, and Yeshua, God had a great deal to say about how what you are reading would be used to influence his people. And from those words and this experience, I can say without equivocation that this is not how the set-apart Spirit operates in our lives. She does not speak externally but, instead, internally. She does not communicate independently from the Word of God but, rather enlightens us regarding it. She is inspiring, not compelling. And the Spirit does not make a racket. When she comes upon us, there is no audible sound. And languages, Qatsyr, the various dialects of human speech, became apparent to them, they came to know and understand them, like a fire burning, pyros, in them. And they were distributed, diamerizo, dispersed, conferred, and appointed, katizo, upon, epi, each one, hekastos of them, autos. And they were all individually, filled with, pimplamai, the holy, pagan, gender neuter of Hogios, 119 spirit, pi nu sigma, placeholder for pneuma, and began, archomai, to speak, laleo, other, heteros, different, languages, Qatsyr, dialects, just as, kathos, the spirit, pi nu alpha, gave, didomai, them the ability to convey the spoken words, apothegomai, the ability to pronounce words. Acts 2:3-4. It is true, the world would benefit from understanding the mode, enduring testimony regarding the appointments which are mikray, invitations to be called out and meet. And the only way for people around the globe to understand what the Torah teaches would be through accurate translations. This is largely why the Yada Yahowah series exists. We recognize the value of rendering the testimony Yahowah conveyed in Hebrew in the language spoken by billions of people. English has become the most universal language, especially among Jews. What is inaccurate, however, is that there is no indication in the Torah and prophets that the Spirit teaches anyone a foreign language. She enlightens us in the language of God, Hebrew. While I do not think that there would have been any reason for disciples, and there is no mention of them in any prophecy, should they have existed, most would have been bilingual. In addition to Hebrew, they would have been reasonably fluent in Aramaic, Greek, and Latin due to the influence of the Assyrians, Babylonians, Greeks, and Romans. What they were missing, based upon what has been said and what follows, is an accurate understanding of what the Torah teaches. And that is the role of the Spirit. If it were not for the popularity of the Pentecostal movement, where speaking in tongues is interpreted to be praising God in a heavenly language, I would not be 120 required to state the obvious. This presentation states that those affected by the Spirit were equipped to speak human languages, not God's. The language spoken in heaven is Hebrew, rendering the notion of speaking in the tongues of angels by muttering incomprehensible gibberish, as nonsensical as the sounds themselves. What's more, Pentecostals act like they are out of their minds, often posing as the poster children for, "This is your brain on religion." The reason for posturing the notion of the likes of a burning fire within them was to replace the experience of Moses and the children of Israel around Korib when the Torah was being revealed. These Christians were allegedly experiencing their own fire and, therefore by implication, a New Testament to replace the Torah. The claim in this case is that the Spirit, rather than enlightening the disciples, or helping them translate the Hebrew text of the Torah and Nabi, equipped them to become bilingual. And while that is unlikely, and there is no evidence to substantiate it, what little we see from Peter, John, and James, using their anglicized names, demonstrates that they had nothing of value to contribute. They knew nothing of doubt fulfilling the first four mikray, and that's all that really mattered. What follows is an outright lie. It was scribed by Luke on Peter's and Paul's behalf to besmirch Jews. For his new religion to prevail, Yahweh would have to be swept off center stage and replaced by the Gentile church. And now, existing, Amy, inside, Ice, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, resided, Katoikeo, Yahweh, Yaudios, Jews, overtly pious, Eulabes, men, Andros, from, Apo, every, pa, ethnicity, ethnos, race, under, hypo, heaven, Orinos. And so now when, this, hautos, voice, phone, came to exist, ginomai, in large assemblies of people 121 plethys, they were confused, sigkio, dikos, hoti, each and every one, hekastos haste, heard, akuo, what was spoken, laleo, in his autos, own, idios, language, dialectos. Acts 2:5-6. As is the case with so much of the Christian New Testament, the writer's attempts to paint Jews as hypocrites, overtly pious and, yet, totally befuddled by language is pathetic. And it is dishonest to claim that Yahweh, Jews, who are a unique ethnicity, represent every race under heaven. This overture defines Goyim, Gentiles, not Jews. This amalgamation of Jews into one monolithic perception was not a simple mistake but instead sinister and deliberate. Peter and Paul, like Muhammad after them, wanted God's chosen people tarred with the same brush. The reason for this is that the Jews, unlike the Gentiles, knew that these men were lying because they were constantly misappropriating and misquoting their Torah wa Nabi to establish their credibility. Having rejected Peter and Paul, the Jews had to be silenced and discredited for either of these infamous men to be believed. Beyond silencing Yahweh, for Peter's or Paul's claims to be seen as plausible, their followers would have to become the recipients of the promises made to God's people, the Israelites. And for that to occur, they would both have to concoct schemes by which God could be presented not only rejecting his people but, also, compelled to replace them with others. They accomplished this by slandering Yahweh, attributing all manner of lies to them, and doing so in a way that the entire race would be despised. The first strokes toward that end appear in Peter's speech and then in Paul's 14 epistles. The book of Acts would memorialize these slanderous and sour notes, which were then repurposed in Mark, Luke, and Matthew. 122. Keeping it real, it would have been impossible for there to have been a gathering representing every race on earth in this place at this time. Further, people are confused by languages they do not speak, and not by their native tongue. Yes, I am pointing out the obvious, and yet, without someone having done so, billions upon billions have been misled by this malarkey for nearly a score of centuries. You may have also noticed that the scene changed abruptly from a room of like-minded people within a single home to a widespread phenomenon expressed throughout an entire city. That could never have occurred within the covenant because participation is the result of a deliberate and sequential process. It was fabled here because Peter needed to break free of the Hebrew text of the Torah, and from the chosen people. With his pretext, Hebrew could be cast aside, as could Jew, because now every tongue and ethnicity on earth were communing with the new God while pious Jews were confused. Out with the old and in with the new. Fortunately, I do not live under the influence of Paul's and Peter's Roman Catholic Church. Given the opportunity, they would have tortured me to death as a deterrent to keep me, and to dissuade others, from telling you the truth. And yet sadly today, they are tormenting little children instead. It is bewildering that so many believe that this irrational rant was inspired by God. Even worse than inferring that he was prone to hyperbole and was capricious, Christians somehow think that God is disloyal and withdrew the countless promises he had made to Israel so that they could be transferred to Roman-loving Goyim. Not only would that have made God a liar and an anti-Semite, like themselves, but he would also have become completely untrustworthy, giving evermore 123 credence to the realization that religious gods are made in man's image. And in reality, the Romans who controlled Judea, and who evolved into the Roman Catholic Church, were far worse than the Jews. Continuing to slander the chosen people on behalf of the worst of people, we read, and, Kai, besides, they were out of their minds, existemi, and they were surprised, thormozo, saying, Lego, look, I do, are not, the entirety, hapas, the whole and all, of them who are, Amy, speaking, Laleo, Galileans, Galileos. Acts 2:7. Pointing out the obvious again, had there been disciples they would have been Jewish, as would have been the celebrants of this day, thereby rendering this entire diatribe absurd. They were, after all, in Jerusalem in the heart of Roman-occupied Yahweh. Moreover, Galilee was used as a pejorative because it was a swampy, mosquito-infested lowland, beneath Jerusalem in status and elevation. It was inserted to make the Jews appear like snobs. Furthermore, if the entirety of them who are speaking Galileans, then there could not have been people of every ethnicity. And if the visible fulfillment of Passover 7 weeks ago didn't garner anyone's attention, how were words going to change that on this day? This dialogue demonstrates the inherent fraud associated with the Christian New Testament. At the very earliest, Acts was written 40 to 50 years after the fulfillment of Shabuw'ah, well beyond the time a specific conversation could have been accurately recalled. Luke, its author, was not an eyewitness to any of these events, making his account hearsay. Moreover, pious Jews would have spoken Hebrew, not Greek. Further, the Roman legions which occupied Jerusalem were comprised of conscripts and slaves from throughout the 124 empire. Under such circumstances, the sound of a foreign language would not have driven anyone crazy. Much of the Christian New Testament was written to include awkward and unattested conversations. Not only were they contrived, but they were also projected upon the entire population, all to condemn the Jewish people. That way, the Christians could not only claim superiority, but they would also have a common enemy and ready excuse for their horrid behavior. Somehow, each and every one, hekastos, hears them speak, akuo, in the distinct, idios, individual and unique, language and dialectos of their birth, now, Parthians, Medes, Elamites, and those who live in Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt, Egyptos, parts of Libya towards Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, Romeos, not only Yahweh, Yaudios, Jews, and newcomers, proselytos, visitors from other nations, Cretans and Arabs, Araps, listening to, akuo, receiving the news and hearing, them speak, laleo, talk, in their own tongue, glossa, language and dialect, the magnificent things and powerful works, megalios, the great deeds and miracles of the God, theta upsilon, placeholder for theo. Acts 2:8-11. While it would have been impossible, even for a multilingual disciple or eyewitness to know if this had occurred, the overall point is implausible, especially with the pretense of authenticity inherent in the alleged details. Among the most glaring issues undermining this text, the Romans were not visitors and Yahweh were listed twice while their language, the only one that actually mattered, was not mentioned. Most everyone from Mesopotamia would have spoken Aramaic, a language which was very similar to Hebrew, making Parthians, Medes, and Elamites verbose while the absence of the Persians was a significant slight. Arabs speak a corrupted 125 form of Hebrew. Similarly, insignificant places like Cappadocia, Pontus, Phrygia, Pamphylia, and Cyrene were listed, while the people responsible for the lingua franca of this region, the Greeks, were not. Had this been written, the disciples, in addition to their native Hebrew, now spoke Greek, Latin, and Aramaic. It would have been far more credible. One would have been hard-pressed to find anyone in Yerushalayim who was not conversant in one or more of these languages. In this passage, the Greek word, proselytos, is transliterated in most English Bibles as proselytes. Then, those who aided and abetted this misleading transliteration, erroneously defined that word as converts to Judaism, and thereby misconstrued the intent of Shabuw'ah. This day marked neither the birth of the Church nor the transition from Judaism to Christianity as Catholics and Protestants profess. Equally relevant, Jews did not, and do not, proselytize. Paul's rants against Judaizers were, therefore, delusional and likely the result of paranoia. Now addressing the lack of sanity inherent in Luke's hearsay reconstruction of this day, the beneficiaries of Shabuw'ah would have been few and far between, and the supposed disciples would not have been counted among them. This is because the fourth Mikra is the result of the first three. Nothing begins on Chamesim, Pentecost. Only those who had accepted Yahowah's invitation to attend Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, who understood the purpose of these modim, and who recognized what Dowd had just accomplished, to honor their inherent promises of life, perfection, and adoption would have been enriched during Shabuw'ah. And since Luke's fanciful portrayal of events does not make this connection, nor mention these dates, everything he claims is ignorant, irrational, and invalid. 126 While anyone can attend the party, there are some baseline requirements for benefiting from Shabuw'ah. These include knowing and using Yahowah's name along with a familiarity with and acceptance of his Torah, guidance, which is where the Mikrei are explained. The beneficiaries would all have been covenant members who had walked away from religious influences, affirming that they could not have been starting a new religion on this or any mode. They would have been walking with Yahowah and trusting him, such that they would have questioned anything spoken by men. They would have accepted the conditions of the covenant and would have been circumcised, neither of which was mentioned because this religious charade was designed to be misleading. The actual celebrants of Shabuw'ah, should there have been any on this day, would have been prepared for Towrah, such that they would have become effective heralds in explaining what Dowd had accomplished while addressing the urgency of Kippurim. There would have been no religious converts to be found here, only empowered and enriched relationships with father and son. Sporadically and sparingly, to the great chagrin of the religion claiming to have been born on this day, the message of the Torah Nabi has been conveyed to those willing to listen by spirit-filled men and women who are cognizant of the conditions and benefits of the Berith and Mikrei. As a result, Yahowah's family is inclusive of people from different races and places. Everyone is welcome. And all arrive the same way, by embracing what Yahowah is offering and accepting what he is requesting in return. The Mikra of Chamesim, invitation to be called out and meet of 50 is Kodesh, set apart, a special day for us to reveal the magnificent work performed by Father 127, and Son in concert with the set-apart spirit during Pesach and Matzah leading through Bikurim to Shabuw'ah. It is an annual party where those who are related to Yah invite their friends to celebrate the good news. A path home has been laid out at great cost, its toll paid by the Zarowah so that we might journey free of encumbrances. This day of growth and enrichment will endure for all time, for all people, and in all places, serving as a rehearsal of what was to come and now has been done. The Feast of 7 Sevens follows firstborn children by 7 weeks. The pattern is 7 Shabats plus 1 day after the special Shabat observance of unyeasted bread, the most essential day on the road to our redemption. As we have discovered, this opportunity to be called out and meet on Shabuw'ah is a time to be enriched by Yahowah's word so that we can communicate his testimony more effectively during Towrah. It is open to all people, free and slave, Yahweh and Goim, men and women, young and old, no matter how common or unclean. We know this because it is the only Mikrei where yeasted bread is sanctioned, and because God has said so. Unlike the Catholic Eucharist, which is limited to their converts, this festival comes with an open invitation. Shabuw'ah is the day that unites the promise with its purpose, letting everyone know what Father and Son are offering and expecting in return. The reason for the yeast in the bread is ingenious. To become part of Yahowah's family, we are all required to remove it from our lives, which is symbolic of walking away from Miriam and Babel. And now that those who have disassociated from religion and politics have become immortal and perfected, adopted and empowered, as covenant members we are perfectly equipped to share what we know with those most in need of hearing it, those under the influence of man's malignant schemes. It is the 128 cure for what ails them. And to help them, we must speak to them where we find them. Upon examining the purpose of this day, and to those which precede and follow it, one comes to understand that the best way to broadcast its message and celebrate its inheritance is to host a grand party replete with a medley of foods, including a variety of libations, and most especially breads and desserts baked with yeast. Invite everyone who is interested in knowing God, whether they are engaged in a relationship with him, mired in a religious swamp, or deluded by a secular mirage. After a time of casual conversation and music, stand before the guests and share what you have come to know about the path home our Heavenly Father and His Son have provided. Explain how, on this day, those who rely upon Passover, unyeasted bread, and firstborn children grow as part of God's family while they are enriched by the covenant, enlightened by the Torah, and empowered by the Spirit. Most of all, have fun. Radiate the light that comes from knowing express the joy that loving families experience as their children grow. The more we act and sound like we are part of the covenant, the more we will want to benefit from what we enjoy. Each mikra has been designed to memorialize an important event in the life of Israel and to be prophetic of even more important events in the unfolding of Yahweh's redemptive plan. They speak poignantly of the Messiah's role in the reconciliation of his people, with detail after detail pointing directly and unambiguously toward Dowd fulfilling the Torah's promises. He is the light, and it is the map along the way. What is interesting here with Shabuw'ah, is that like Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, the explanations of what actually transpired are found in the Torah, Nabi, wa Mizmor. Apart from what Moses, Dowd, and Yashar wrote 1480, 1040, and 777 years prior to their fulfillment, 129 there is no other informed or inspired accounting of the fulfillment of the first four Mikra in year 4000 on April 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and May 24th 33 CE. And this is by design. Yahweh's testimony is verified through prophecy, not via man's inconsistent and unreliable contemporaneous histories, as demonstrated by Acts 2. And at the time of their fulfillment, there were no prophets. The last to speak for God, Malachi, had come and gone 400 years before. Had Yahweh not been so irascible, had they listened to Yahweh and his prophets, there could have been, perhaps would have been, many thousands of witnesses and celebrants observing and appreciating the fulfillments of Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, and Shabuw'ah by Father, Spirit, and Son, which otherwise went unnoticed. This suggests a number of things, all of which are illuminating. First, the revelation that Dowd as Gabriel, God's most capable and courageous man offered through Daniel was fulfilled, just as Dowd had affirmed. In the midst of serving his people, the Messiah was cut off from them. And as a result, there would be no additional prophetic revelation from Yahweh. Second, during the next 20 centuries, at least apart from Father and Son, no one would recognize the fulfillment of the first four Mikra. Dowd would arrive as the embodiment of some of the most profound prophetic announcements ever made, and only the prophets paid any attention, that is until today, a decade before Dowd's return on Kippurim. Third, while the Zarawah, sacrificial Lamb of God made the sacrifices during Pesach and Matzah to open the doorway to life, and enable our perfection so that we could enter through it, he was the lone beneficiary of Bikurim and Shabuw'ah at the time. Dowd was the firstborn and the lastborn into the covenant he embodied and enabled 130 for a score of centuries. And he, alone, was empowered and enriched at this time, which is why I credit him with each of the initial four Mikra. It would be a very long time before there would be another beneficiary. Fourth, the Torah, Nabi, wa Mizmor from Moses to Malachi over 1,000 years represents the sum total of Yahweh's inspired revelation to his people. We come to know God and are saved by him as a result of what we read therein or not at all. It is how I came to understand and then share the testimony and resulting insights you are reading. Fifth, while God's testimony has been available to humankind for 3,470 years, beginning with the revelation of the Torah, and then affirmed 2,700 to 3,000 years ago by Yashar and Dowd, everything these three men revealed on behalf of Yahweh and Yahweh has been either ignored, misconstrued, or misappropriated in the conception of Judaism and Christianity. Sixth, since Shabuw'ah exists to prepare covenant members for Towrah, such that we can be effective witnesses to what has and will occur pursuant to Dowd's fulfillment of the Modim, it appears that both are being fulfilled today with you, the one reading Yada Yahowah, as both witness and beneficiary. Seventh, there was no reason for benefit to the Greek misrepresentation and misappropriation of Shabuw'ah. Luke's accounting of events in Acts is completely inaccurate. Moreover, there was no Jesus, no Christ, no disciples, no Pentecost, no proliferation of multilingual speakers, the birth of a church, or inordinate hostility by Jews toward Christians on this day, the 24th of May, Julian calendar, 7 weeks after the fulfillment of Pesach and Matzah leading to Bikurim in 33 CE. The fact that each of the first four mode has been introduced and enabled in the proper order and time, and in the right way by the correct individual, makes the odds 131 against their coincidental fulfillment over 16 billion to 1. The lesson is, pay attention to people, dates, and numbers because they are important to our Creator. This pattern is important because there are 3 more annual feasts yet to be more fully realized. They all take place in the autumn, in Tishri, the seventh and final month of Yahweh's redemptive calendar. Each predicts a strategically essential event in the reconciliation of Yisrael and Yahuwah with Yahweh and our return home. And more to the point, they complete the picture God is painting. The spring feasts have come to pass, the fall feasts are yet to come. Yahweh has given us carefully drawn prophetic word pictures to teach us the most important lessons we can possibly learn. While it is trivial by comparison, there is a sinister religious proclamation that may have inadvertently arisen as a result of a misappropriation of Shabuw'ah, one which poisons 1.5 billion souls. To share the misguided notion of Christian salvation in the language of the Arabs, in Acts 2:8-11, an alphabet was required, as they had none at this time. Written Arabic, the language of the Quran, was actually created by Syrian Yahweh, Jews who were befuddled by Christian doctrine so that they could spread Peter's and Paul's plague of death. The resulting Syriac alphabet and vocabulary, derived from the 22 letters that comprise the Hebrew alphabet in the 6th century CE, ultimately became the tool Satan would use in his most acclaimed recital, the Islamic Quran. 132 Of particular interest in this regard is the fact that almost all of the Quran's essential terms are actually Hebrew, with a smattering of Greek, but not Arabic. And yet, Muslims the world over, unaware of the basis of their language, claim that those who do not read Paleo-Arabic, which would include all but a few hundred people worldwide, cannot understand Allah's message. That would be untrue because the best way to comprehend the Quran, besides reordering it chronologically and setting it into the context of Muhammad's life as it is revealed in the Hadith, oral reports, is to appreciate the meaning of the Hebrew words which comprise the Quranic message. This includes the Quran itself. It is from the Hebrew kara and conveys the same meaning, to read and recite. It is the first word that Satan, the adversary, impersonating Gabriel, God's most competent and courageous man, a Hebrew title, allegedly conveyed to Muhammad. The basis of Allah's claim, and the foundation of Islam, is the false notion that Allah, not Yahweh, was the God of Adam and his never-named wife, Noach, Abraham, Ishmael, Yitzhak, and Jacob, Lot, Moses, and Aharon, Shaul, Daud, Gabriel, Goliath, and Shalimah, Eliah, and Elisha, even the mythical misnomer Jesus, whom Allah calls Isa, Arabic for Esau, the non-existent Al-Huriyun, apostles, Mary, Joseph, and John the Baptist, along with the reprobates Enoch, Ezekiel, Gog, and Magog, Job, and Jonah, and the resolutely pagan Dhul Qarnayn, Alexander the Great, even Shaitan, Satan, Allah. These names were all supplied to Muhammad by rabbis in Yathrib who sold Babylonian Talmud passages to him circa 625 CE. Other than Rabbi Akiba's promotion of the Jerusalem Talmud and subsequent advocacy of the false Messiah Bar Kokhba, the rabbis who sold Muhammad the fodder for his Quran made the worst bargain in Jewish history. 133 As a result, Allah is cited protesting that his Quran confirms the Torah, prophets, and Gospels, when Satan's Quranic recital is the antithesis of Yahweh's Torah wa Nabi, and the Gospels contradict both the Torah and Quran. Muhammad, for example, as Allah's lone messenger, violated and negated each of the 10 statements Yahweh etched in stone. Allah even says that his Quran, written in pure Arabic, was inscribed on tablets before the world was created, and the reason that the Torah, prophets, and Gospels no longer convey the same message is that 7th century CE Jews living in Yathrib, today's Medina, changed and corrupted their scriptures to foil Muhammad. Therefore, the existence of the Dead Sea Scrolls proves that the Islamic God was lying. But more than this, it is unconscionable that the advocates of Islam, a religion that inverts and repudiates Yahweh's message, claim that the Arabic of the Quran is proof of its superiority, and material to its message, when in fact, the means to convey it was developed by the very people Allah orders Muslims to wipe out to the last. These things known, had rabbis, priests, and Christian theologians not removed Yahweh's name from his Torah wa Nabi, Islam would have been stillborn. Even a fool would have been able to recognize that Allah is not Yahweh. And had rabbis not sold Babylonian Talmud recitals to Muhammad to expand his Quran, the resulting book would have been limited to plagiarizing Jewish poets in Yemen. It would have concluded with the satanic verses and mythical journey from Petra to Jerusalem aboard a winged ass. Everything beyond that point was provided by Jews. So, is it any wonder that Yahweh was without prophets? 134 There is still much we can learn from how Luke's fictional portrayal of what did not occur on 7 Shabats became Christian law and served as the birth of a church that would torment God's people, even if the primary lesson is to distrust the Christian New Testament. But, also, Kai, all, Pa, were astonished, existemi, astounded beyond comprehension, even, Kai, perplexed and puzzled, diaporio, embarrassed and in doubt, at a loss without sufficient information to render a rational conclusion, with different people, olos, saying, lego, 2, pros, others, olos, what, 'tis, is, Amy, the purpose of, fellow this, hautos. Acts 2:12. Let's be honest, there was nothing everyone in Jerusalem agreed upon, not among the Romans and Greeks, and certainly not among Jews. Their history proves that YYV5C3 were divided among themselves. It was their internal fractures that festered, bringing the wrath of Rome upon Judea with Pompey's invasion in 63 BCE, Vespasian's assault in 67 CE following the revolt in 66, and again following the Bar Kokhba uprising under Qatsyr by Hadrian in 133 CE. On all three occasions, the Jews may have prevailed over the Romans had they not been a house divided. Anytime we read, with people saying, we know that the writer's sentiments are being projected upon his perceived foes. An actual quote would have to be attributed to a specific individual who said it and to another who heard it, in addition to providing the names or conditions under which it was preserved accurately over the decades. Moreover, the Jews knew the purpose of Shabuw'ah because it was written in the Torah. It was Greeks, like Luke, who were clueless. When it comes to knowing the mind of God, there are several paths a person can pursue. Most simply ignore the quest, preoccupied with their mortal existence, or 135 overconfident that man is the highest form of life. Others, like the man who wrote this passage, do not know enough to draw an informed conclusion, or are driven by their own agenda. And while both of these roads lead to death, and to the destruction of one's soul upon the completion of their mortal existence, there is a far worse fate awaiting those who promote the false notion that Pentecost celebrates the birth of the Church. We have read the Torah's explanations of Shabuw'ah. God has delineated its purpose. Moreover, we know that the promise of the Shabat is only manifest to those who have answered Yahowah's invitation to attend and capitalize upon Chag Matzah. The day is irrelevant apart from the three which precede it, none of which were mentioned in this narrative. Further, as we know, there is no mention of a church in the Torah or in the Nabi. Shabuw'ah is the mikra designed to enrich and empower the covenant family. We have been called out of man's world and into God's realm, away from religion and into a relationship with our Father. Even today, the secular and the sectarian ridicule the mode mikra, belittling them, concealing them, corrupting them, or counterfeiting them. It is why the narrow path to God remains unpopular and largely unknown. Christians never missed an opportunity to demonize Jews and portray them as the enemy of their God and religion. Therefore, Luke promoted. Others, heteros, now, poked fun, scoffing, sneering, and mocking, diakluazo, flapping their lips and running their mouths, saying, Legos, it is because they are, hoti ami, exceptionally full, mestu, with sweet wine, glucose, new wine which is still fermenting. Acts 2:13. 136. If Paul's accomplice had written about the correlation between the Torah's presentation of Shabuw'ah and its ability to provide the benefits of the covenant following Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, this would have had merit, but he did just the opposite. His intent is in trying to besmirch Jews. And therefore, it is as erroneous as it is slanderous. Years ago, I had errantly held the view that Peter was somewhat credible because he, at times, rejected Paul. And I saw it as a badge of honor that Paul overtly condemned Peter in Galatians. However, when we read all of what Peter is alleged to have said and written, while he was right to oppose Paul, most everything else attributed to him was wrong. And so, it is now that portends that Peter stood up to refute his fellow Jews. But now, Petros, Peter, Greek for rock, stood up, pistomai, made a stand so as to enable others to stand, with, sin, the 11, he raised, epirome, his voice, phone, and he spoke to them, apothengamai, he addressed them, YYV5C3, Iaudios, a transliteration of YYV5C3, beloved of Yahowah, men, andros, and all, who dwell in, Katoikeo, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, a transliteration of Yerushalayim, the source of guidance on reconciliation. Listen carefully to, enatizomai, my voice, rima, and let this, hautos, be. Amy, known, nostos, to you. Acts 2:14. Inconsistencies expose fraudulent portrayals. We have gone from addressing every ethnicity under the heavens in every language other than Hebrew to dressing down Jews alone. There was no Jew named Petros. It is a Greek name derived from Petra, meaning rock or stone. It is also the name of the pagan religious center where Islam's tribute to the rock god Allah was actually born. 137. Similarly, Paul disowned his Hebrew name, Shaul, not only because it was synonymous with Shaul, hell, but because of the many prophecies where he was called out by name and condemned. As such, it served Luke's interests to change Shimon's Hebrew name, which means listen to him, to the Greek Petros, for stone because the foundation of the new religion would be built on his legacy. Additionally, since Luke was Paul's publicist and promoter, and he realized that his mentor despised the notion of disciples in that he had not been included, Luke referred to them as the 11, rather than by this title. Further, the entire proposition was incredulous. There would have been an infinitesimal number of people in Jerusalem on this day, who would have both been interested in Shabuw'ah and not spoken Hebrew, Latin, Greek, and Aramaic. There would have been no fuss and no one, much less everyone, would have been confused or upset. And should there have been a reason for it, a multilingual Jew speaking other than Hebrew, Latin, Greek, or Aramaic would have been perceived as enlightened, not intoxicated, making this line of reasoning ludicrous. Because, they are not, drunk, methuo, intoxicated, in the manner, you suppose, hypolambano, are willing to accept, for indeed, it is, the third, tritos, hour, hora, of the day, himera. To the contrary, Allah, this, hautos, exists as, the pronouncement, ipon, of, dia, the prophet, prophets, Yawel, Iol, a transliteration of Yawel, a contraction of Yahowah and El, meaning Yahweh is God, but improperly transliterated Joel, Acts 2:15-16. So, the moral of the story is that while intoxication may facilitate being multilingual, being drunk was not possible because the day was still young. Therefore, their 138 was an entirely better explanation for what they were witnessing, which could be found, not in a bottle, but by completely misrepresenting a prophecy presented by Yawel, Joel. Let it be known that Shabuw'ah is the pronouncement of the prophet Moses. There is nothing in Yawel, Joel to explain 7 Shabats. It speaks of Yahweh's return in year 6000 to fulfill Yom Kippurim. Therefore, if Peter cited it as a retort to these alleged Jewish cynics, he was mistaken. It was the wrong mode and wrong time. And if Luke arbitrarily attributed this mistake to him, he demonstrated that his gospel ought not to be trusted. Either way, Acts 2:16-21 is erroneous. According to Luke, the rock is said to have quoted Yawel, Joel 2:28-32. At least that is what is recorded in Acts 2:17-2:21. However, since Shimon would not have delivered his rebuttal to fellow Jews in Greek, even if it occurred, to accurately reflect upon what the prophet wrote and the rock may have said, we will need to examine it in the original language, something we will do at the conclusion of this chapter and again during our review of the events pertaining to the Day of Reconciliations. So, for now, here is that reading as translated by the King James Bible. And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out of my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. 17, and on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in those days of my spirit, and they shall prophesy. 18. And I will show wonders in heaven above, and signs in the earth beneath, blood, and fire, and vapor of smoke. 19. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and notable day of the Lord 139 come. 20. And it shall come to pass, that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Acts 2:21. Should you prefer a more literal and accurate rendering? And it shall come to be, exist in an identical fashion, the final, eschatos, the last in a series. The theological term eschatology is derived from this word, days, himera, theos, God, theta sigma, placeholder for theos, says, lego, affirms, I will pour out, ikkiamai, I will bestow and spill, liberally distributing, from, apo, me, my, ego, pneuma, spirit, pi nu sigma, placeholder for pneuma, upon, epi, among, all, parsa, flesh, sarx, physical bodies, on the corporeal mortal nature of humankind. Your sons, hyos, and your daughters, thygata, will speak inspired utterances, prophetuo, proclaim what God wants known. Your young men, neaniskos, used of males between 24 and 40 years old, shall see visions, herasis, from Hoau, see with their own eyes, and your elders, presbyteros, old men and ranking individuals, will experience supernatural communication from God, inipnian inupniasmai, experience revelations while dreaming. Acts 2:17. Indeed, really and truly, upon, epi, my male servants, doulos, slaves, and also upon my female servants, dola, female slaves, those, ekinos, days, himera, period of time, I will pour out, ikkiamai, I will shed and bestow, spill and distribute, from, apo, me, my, ego, pneuma, spirit, pi nu alpha, placeholder for pneuma, upon, epi, among, them, and they will speak inspired utterances, prophetuo, proclaim what God wants known. Acts 2:18. And, kai, I will allow and produce, didamai, bestow and permit, wonders and miracles which foreshadow 140 significant upcoming events, terrors, omens, marvels, and signs which serve as portent to arouse attention, in, the sky, Orinos, atmosphere and universe, above, Anyo, and signs, Semain, miraculous signals and unusual occurrences which transcend the common course of nature, upon, Epi, the earth, G, land, below, Kato, blood, Hymar, fire, Pier, and, Kai, rising clouds of, Atmes, steam, billowing vapor, from air and atmospheric, smoke, Kopnos. Acts 2:19. The sun, Helios, will be changed, metastrypho, turned, to, ice, darkness, skotos, obscured, made gloomy, from skia, have its light intercepted as in a shadow, and the moon, Selene, to, ice, blood, Hymar, before, Prin, the coming, Ekamai, arrival and appearance of the, Ho, great, megas, massively important and enormously sizable, and brilliantly shining, Epiphanes, wonderful, glorious, radiant, and illustrious, notable appearance in clear and full view shining forth as light visible as a star, day, Hemera, time, of the Kurios. Lord, Kappa Omega, placeholder for Kurios, most always conveyed as Lord. Acts 2:20. And it shall come to pass, Amy, be that, all, par, every one, who, hos, and as many as, used as a preposition to present a possibility, call upon, epikaliomai, ask for help in and bear, the ho, personal and proper name, anoma, of the Kurio, Lord, Kappa Omega, will be saved, sozo. Acts 2:21. This is yet another nail in the coffin of the Christian New Testament. Even when its authors turned to the prophets for credibility's sake, they embarrassed themselves. This did not occur in 33 CE but will in 2033. To understand Shabuw'ah, we must turn to Moses, not Yowel. Yowel's prophecy is spectacular, confirming many of the things we have surmised while offering new insights regarding what we should expect as the world is 141 transformed before our eyes during the transition between Kippurim and Sukkah. It would be 2,000 years from 33 CE to the last days in 2033. That alone should have been sufficient to scuttle Luke's credibility, and the notion that Acts was inspired. The Spirit did not come upon all flesh at this time, not even close. There were no new prophets inspired either, something that would remain so from Malachi to the fulfillment of Kippurim, year 6000 year. On this day, and for the 730,500 which would transpire after it, there were no wonders in the heavens nor signs in the earth beneath. There was no blood and fire, vapor and smoke on Shabuw'ah in 33 CE, and while these things would occur, they would be of man's doing, not God's in the interim. The sun was not darkened and the moon did not appear as blood on May 24, 33 CE. This will not occur until the day of reconciliations in year 6000 year because Kippurim is the great and notable day of Yahowah to come. Further, as evidenced by this writing, no one called upon Yahowah's name, and thus no one was saved during Shabuw'ah in year 4000 year. So please tell me, how is it that billions upon billions are fooled by such outright lies? Unable to produce a prophecy, or even understand one, these charlatans couldn't even get their history right. The acceptance of Acts provides a sad commentary on the perceptiveness of humankind. Most have become as the rock was portrayed, as dumb as a stone. Luke's late 1st century assessment of Shimon's incredulous protestations against his fellow Yahweh during 7 Shabats continued with him, giving religious zealots who were mocking these events an earful. Israelite, Israelites, a transliteration of Yisraelite, men, andros, listen to, akuo, these words, logos, Iazau, Jesus, Iotanu Upsilon, a placeholder for Iazau which 142 became Jesus, the Nazarene, Nazarios, is a man, andros, who publicly demonstrated, apodinimi, 2, isu, psi, that he is from, apo, theos, God, theta sigma, placeholder for theos, God, using supernatural powers and abilities, dynamis, to perform extraordinary miracles with prophetic significance, teros. These are signs, semain, which, hos, theos, God, theta sigma placeholder for theos, God, performed, poiomai, through, dia, him, autos, in your midst, mesos, as, kathos, you know, oida. Acts 2:22. At this point, the 10 tribes which comprised Israel were long gone, hauled off to Assyria as slaves. Therefore, it is unlikely that the rock would have pelted them with this designation. Having purportedly spent 3 years with Daud, the rock would have known his name, rendering Iazau absurd. The Greek rendering is not even remotely close to the Messiah's name. Worse, why ask people to listen if all you are going to do is lie to them? Nazareth did not exist at the time. A town would not be established by that name until the 2nd or 3rd century. The designation, Jesus of Nazareth, conveys the wrong name and wrong place at the wrong time. This inclusion of Nazarios here in Acts and again in Matthew proves that these embellishments were scribed by Eusebius in the 4th century, after Constantine's mommy took a vacation in the Holy Land. If Hamashiach and Zoroaster demonstrated his credentials, revealing that he was Ben Elohim in a tangible and miraculous way, there would have been no reason for this speech. If those among the supposed hecklers had witnessed supernatural powers and extraordinary miracles, they would not be criticizing the multilinguals but instead apologizing to them. 143 And yet, none of this would have made Yahowah, Jesus a theos, God, as the passage concludes. Moreover, it is not the purpose of the Passover lamb to show off and not in God's nature to dazzle us with signs and wonders. His preference is to impress us with his words, of which we have almost nothing credibly retained from anyone at this time. Should we want to be impressed, it's best we turn to the Torah, Nabi, Wa Mizmor. He was appointed to, horizo, the prearranged and prophetic, prognosis, plan and purpose, rule, of Theos, Theta Sigma. Acts 2:23. Nope, not even close. There was no prearranged prophetic testimony pertaining to Yahowah, Jesus. Not a word. Yahowah, Jesus is not part of Yahowah's plan or purpose. Every prophecy pertaining to that which had transpired in the past 7 weeks leading up to Shabuw'ah in year 4000 year, 33 CE was written of or by David. With this now properly acknowledged and understood, I have another bone to pick with Peter and Luke. It is easy to misunderstand the notion of prearranged with Calvinism on the rise in the West. So, I would like to make an important distinction. Yahowah's response to the fallen nature of humankind was predetermined, but our response to God is always subject to free will. Each of us has the opportunity to ignore God's plan, serve a God of man's making, accept Yahowah, or reject him. Within prophecy there are certain things that Yahowah has preordained, the fulfillment of the Mikra with Daud are examples. They have been and will continually be accomplished on the stage of human events in complete accord with the Torah's teaching, all in the proper order, and on the predetermined day, regardless of mankind's response. 144 other prophecies simply report what humans will do with the continued exercise of free will. In such cases, Yahowah has witnessed our future and is reporting back to us what he has seen. Then, when these things consistently occur as he attested, we are provided proof that we can trust his testimony. Therefore, while Yahowah was certain that Yahweh would return to Israel in the last days as a result of the Holocaust, he had no hand in those horrific events. Individual men and women made poor decisions, squandering the gift of free will, and the consequences were devastating. Such will continue to be the case between now and 2033. What follows is as essential to the New Testament's claim that Christian Gentiles have replaced Jews because Jews betrayed God as it is errant in every respect. The purpose of the Pesach ale was to be the Passover lamb. Had the Zoroaster not served to fulfill Yahowah's promise, there would be no assurance of eternal life in the covenant nor reason to trust God. Daud did not fulfill Passover because he was betrayed but, instead, because he had chosen to do so on behalf of his people. He was betrayed and given over, ekdotos, to, Dia, the hand, share, of the Torahless, anomos, who chose to take control and lift him up, anerio, affixing him, prospegnomy. Acts 2:23. If a modicum of Yahweh actually handed the Messiah over to the Romans then, rather than blaming them and shaming them, we ought to be thanking them. Fulfilling Pesach was essential for us to live, and for that to occur, the lamb must die. Everyone was Torahless at this time. The Jews were in revolt against Yahowah and were just beginning to craft their initial Talmud. The Greeks were infatuated with the Odyssey, the Romans with the Aeneid, and the Christians with Paul's epistles. 145 While prospegnomy is almost always translated as crucify, this Greek word simply means to affix and to fasten. I bring this to your attention because the Roman cross and its piercing nails were irrelevant. Christianity has made a religion out of an inanimate object. It is like crediting a knife for the Qatsyr, Exodus rather than Pesach. The fulfillment of Passover is about the who, where, why, and when. As an interesting aside, it is worth noting that the preponderance of Catholic sculptures and paintings depict their God in one of two ways, as a helpless infant attached to his mother, or helplessly affixed to a tortuous cross. It is as if the Catholic hierarchy has chosen to control him in these ways. They are quietly saying, if he cannot take care of himself, why would you trust him to take care of you? And that leads to, trust us instead with your soul. Theos, Theta Omega, restored him to life and raised him, Anestamai, releasing and dismissing him, Lu, from the suffering and pain, Odin, of death, Thanatos, because, Katoti, it was not, possible, Dynatos, for him to exist, Amy, held and influenced, Kratio, by, hypo, these things. Acts 2:24. On the contrary, the Passover lamb is never restored to life. The Pesach El does not make this sacrifice to save himself. Further, the Zarah's body suffered the full impact of what the Romans mercilessly inflicted. He was not released, or dismissed from the pain. Hasn't anyone read the 22nd Mizmor? Moreover, the excruciating anguish was perpetrated by the Romans who became Roman Catholics, not Jews. Frankly, it borders on insanity to begin by saying that Isaiah was spoken of in prophecy and then contradict the exceedingly graphic prophetic depictions of what occurred when Daud's basar, corporeal body suffered and died to enable the promise of 7. With the Mashor having 146 arrived to fulfill Pesach and Matzah for the benefit of Bikurim and Shabuw'ah, how out of touch with reality did Peter have to be to lie about the most important events in human history without so much as mentioning anything that actually mattered? 700 years prior, Dowd had not only revealed when and where these events would transpire, but he also explained the benefits associated with him fulfilling the Mikra. 1,000 years earlier, he spoke of the Romans ripping the skin from his body and then crucifying him. He told all who would listen that his soul would be laden with our guilt which would be deposited in Sheol, never to be seen again. As a result, he and we would be able to enjoy the benefits of the covenant during Bikurim and Shabuw'ah. At this time in year 4000 year, the Messiah and Son of God, the King of Israel, became our Savior. The exemplar of the covenant and the firstborn of God opened the door to life everlasting, removed our guilt, and brought us into his family where we are enriched, enlightened, empowered, and emancipated on this day. Even more than this, Dowd is returning to give his sorely mistaken, unappreciative, and recalcitrant people a second chance. Fortunately, based upon this rebuke of religion and herald to our King, Jews will come to their senses and cry over this as poignantly foretold in Zechariah. And while Dowd, Yahowah, and Covenant Yahweh celebrate their family reunion, I intend to take care of business, which will involve holding Peter, Paul, and Luke accountable for what they have done. I will try them, convict them, and send them off to an eternity in Sheol. So, should you think I'm being critical now by excoriating them, rest assured, their hell is just beginning. The Stone's Shabuw'ah soliloquy was exacerbated by way of a second Tanakh misappropriation, this time from 147 the 16th Mizmor, Psalm. But so as to better understand why he opted to twist it to promote his religious agenda, let's begin our examination by studying the entire song from which the excerpt was usurped. It begins revealing that Dowd knew what to expect from Yahowah. He developed a keen appreciation of what God wanted to provide and what he expected in return. It is a simple equation: be observant and trust him, and he will attend to your needs. A poem, Miktam, a written piece of literature, inscribed by staining the parchment upon which it is indelibly conveyed, from Ma, to ponder and question and Ketham, the elements which are pure gold, of Dowd, La Dowd, concerning the beloved. You want to watch closely over me and be concerned about me, Shema Eni, you keep a caring focus upon me, tending to me by choice, and you are observant regarding me, Kal imperative, God, El, because, KY, in you, Bar Otter, with you, I confide and trust such that I am kept safe and comforted, Chaser, I rely upon for protection and safekeeping. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:1. Dowd had reason to be confident. God chose him, anointed him Mashor, empowered him with his spirit, called him his son, affirmed that he was right, made him a prophet, and picked him to shepherd his people, to be their savior and king. Dowd was and remains the brightest and most articulate, the most courageous and compassionate, man in human history. And yet, Dowd recognized that he was just a man apart from Yah, even after fulfilling the Mikra. While he was willing and capable, it was by working together that they would forever change the dynamic between God and man. I say, Amah, I confess and convey, expressing in words, to approach, La, drawing near and concerning, 148 Yahowah, Yahowah, God's name pronounced as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence and our Shalom, reconciliation, you are my foundation and support, down any otter, you are my upright one, who is the essential pillar in my tabernacle, I have nothing to offer which is worthwhile or useful, to bar any Baal, I have nothing satisfying or beneficial, apart from you, Al Otter, over you. God. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:2. Since Dowd, the man with the most illustrious resume on earth, felt this way, it should be especially true for us. The most brilliant mind and articulate orator in human history credited Yahowah for everything, and therefore, together they were magnificent, composing prose while promoting possibilities that would be satisfying and beneficial. As a result of what they wrote and accomplished through their collaboration, we have become part of their eternal dynamic. I find it particularly reassuring that Dowd found pleasure in knowing that we would capitalize upon what he had written to lead others to this same place. Regarding, La, concerning the set apart, Kadosh, the separated and uncommon, in the land, Baha Eres, within the country and material realm, who show the way to the relationship, Asher, who lead to the benefits of the proper path. They are also, Hemwah, awesome, Adir, marvelous, desirable, and splendid, honorable and worthy, and in them, Bahem, with them, is all my satisfaction and enjoyment. Shirl Chefetz, is my greatest joy, engendering my complete support and appreciation. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:3. Dowd is addressing everyone who is part of the covenant family. He understands how we can all be part of the same refrain, so he is excited to share his father, his 149 land, his relationship, and his joy with all who will listen to his poem as it was meant to be understood. In contrast to those who would join him in their approach to Yahowah, Dowd realized that most people would be led astray by the likes of Peter and Paul, Akiba and Maimonides, chasing after the gods they have conceived in their image. And yet, there is also an undercurrent of appreciation in these words. The surviving remnant of Israel will have come to realize that they owe their very existence to Dowd. By fulfilling the Mikra, he made it possible for us to receive the benefits of the covenant and overcome the enormous popularity of deceit. The sorrows and suffering, at Sabbath, the anxiety and anguish, the unfavorable circumstances and mental state, as well as the trauma, of those, Hem, who are impetuous and who chase after, Mahah, who are rash and without wisdom, who are fearful, and unwilling to invest the time to study, and who quickly buy into, another, Qatsyr, someone or something different, either following along or doing so to develop a following, will be great as they will be numerous and influential. Rabbah, will multiply, becoming the preponderance of people, and who through their popularity will gain tremendous status. Their drink offerings of blood, Nisekhem Mindam, their sacred and pagan liquid libations to a deity associated with killing and death, aka the Roman Catholic claim that Jesus died and that they are drinking his blood during their Eucharist. I will never pour or offer, Balnazak, I will not endorse or cause to happen, especially with all of their associations with pagan gods, religious rites, and death. And I will not advance or promote, Bar Nasser, I will never lift up or bear, honor or respect, desire or tolerate, their names Ethshemhem, on my lips, Al-Sapa, as part of my speech. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:4. 150 There is a religion that has become enormous and influential, and its rites include drink offerings of blood, Christianity through communion, and Roman Catholicism with the Eucharist. And so, it is interesting that Peter misappropriated a psalm written by Dowd which actually condemns his religion's replacement for Passover. And while that is brazen, not done incriminating himself, the Rock misquoted it to promote the myth of Isaiah when it was scribed in first person by the actual Messiah and Son of God. Is it any wonder religions require faith? In actuality, Dowd is professing that he will never endorse the replacement theology which serves as the underpinning of the world's largest and most powerful institution, the very church that sought to co-opt his reputation, achievements, and accolades. He will not partake in their Eucharist or respect the names popularized by their religion. He, as is the case with every one of Yahowah's prophets, never utters, Christ, Christian, Jesus, Catholic, Cross, Church, Christmas, Easter, Mary, Pope, Rome, Trinity, Holy Ghost, or resurrection. These names and concepts do not appear in the words inspired by God. Moreover, there is no justification whatsoever for the most venerated of Catholic religious rites, the Eucharist. The Roman Catholic Church, which claims its authority from Peter, deliberately and dishonestly stole what Yahowah gave to his people, all to shore up the religion's complete lack of credibility. Therefore, as a result of their desire to degrade him and his people, Dowd has a great deal to say about the consequence of their malfeasance. Christianity not only became the most pervasive and abusive adversary to his people, but no institution in human history would mislead as many souls. There is yet another allusion related to drinking blood. For those who have read the third volume of Babel, Chema-Venomous, you may recall the grotesque nature of the Feast of the Beast as it was presented in the waning 151 chapters of Ezekiel. Upon Satan's arrival in Jerusalem on the 1st of Abib in 2033, his initial edict will be to replace the Torah's modim with his own macabre rites. The inaugural event will be to eat, in cannibalistic fashion, the Jibaurim, most capable and courageous men of God. And during this ghoulish spectacle, the celebrants will drink the blood of those they have sacrificed. While the Lord of Babel speaks of eating human flesh and drinking blood, the underlying symbolic intent is to devour Dowd and his heralds, the two witnesses. Rather than irritating Yahowah by doing the opposite of what his Torah instructs, Dowd has chosen a different cup from which to drink. Yahowah, God's proper name pronounced as instructed in his Torah regarding his hire, and our Shalom, gift is my decision, my fate, my assigned share, and my reward, Manath Chelik Eni, is my allotment by choice, my parcel of ground, my portion of what is offered, and my nourishment, as well as my cup and receptacle, Wakaus Eni, and the vessel which holds what I will drink. You, Otter, uphold, Tamuk, hold and control, my lot and destiny, Goral Eni, my portion and allotment, even my systematic means of making decisions, delineating the outcome. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:5. Father and son were of like mind. They were committed to offering the ultimate gift. They would work together to provide the covenant's benefits by rewarding those who acknowledge what they achieved through the Mikra. It may have been, and likely was, Daud's decision to serve as the Passover lamb, but it is clear that Yahowah concurred with his son's rationale. The fulfillment of Pesach and Matzah, Kippurim and Sukkah became Daud's legacy, his destiny and lot in life. 152 And he was intent on sharing the rewards, knowing that Yahowah would uphold and support him. The measuring lines, Shebel, the inheritance and boundary lines, the shares and apportionments, symbolically even the rigging of the vessel and the joyful processions and boisterous parades, have aligned for me, Nafal La'eni, have been allotted and distributed to be, in highly acceptable and delightful ways, Baha name, in pleasant and favorable places. Surely, indeed, and in addition, I have been offered, Al-Eni, an enjoyable and pleasing, especially brilliant, Shafa, a lovely and beautiful, radiant and bright, inheritance, Nashala, association and share. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:6. This is true not only for Daud, his beloved son, but for all of us who follow his lead. He was the Bakar, firstborn of Chag Matzah, but hardly the last. The Messiah opened the door and provided the way for us to enjoy Bikurim and Shabuw'ah. Beyond this, the universe we have been given to explore is not only 93 billion light-years across, but it also exists in 2 additional dimensions beyond those we can presently perceive, and heaven is yet another dimension beyond. Our inheritance through the covenant is indeed bright, and beautiful. As a result, it is fitting and right. I will commend the excellence of, Barak Eth, I favor the goodness and I am thankful for the greatness of, Yahowah, who, to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, Asher, who, to lead the way to the path to get the greatest joy out of life, determines the plan and provides me with counsel and purpose, Yats Eni, decides the direction and offers me advice, even as, and surely also, during the night, Layla, my emotional response to being Yas implement 153 Kilia Eni, my kidneys, which the ancient Hebrews perceived as the source of emotions, core nature, inclinations and feelings, my innermost being, a compound of Shurl, total, Kali, implement of Yah, provides me with disciplined teaching, proper instruction, and correction, Yashar Eni, facilitates my training and acceptance, direction and guidance, and my appreciation for cause and consequence. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:7. Daud was obviously proud of his father. He enjoyed serving as his implement. The Messiah was passionate about God's plan for his life and the counsel he provided to reveal his purpose. He saw the Torah for what its name implies, the source of disciplined teaching and proper instruction. His life's mission became commending what Yahowah had revealed to show the way to receive the benefits of this relationship. As a result, Daud became the centerpiece of God's outreach to his people. He is the cornerstone upon which the covenant family and home are built. He is the life, the light, and the way. Everything God has said and done coalesces such that we are in the right place when we capitalize upon what Daud has accomplished on our behalf. I intensely desire to firmly place, Shabuw'ah, I genuinely want to put, Yahowah, before me, La Nejd Eni, in front of me, always and continuously, Tamid, regularly and consistently, even perpetually. It is true that, as a result of, me being right, Yamin Eni, my orientation, right side, or right hand, even looking east as the sun rises, from Yaman, to choose to be right, I shall neither be shaken nor fall into an unfavorable or unresolvable circumstance, Balmot, I will not slip up, be dislodged, habitually stagger, fail, or fall, nor will I lose control, be random in my approach, or 154 found to be consistently inadequate, nephil imperfect. It is by being right that Daud carries out and also receives the benefits which are ongoing throughout time. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:8. I would claim the same thing, as should you. Yahowah should be our priority, the one who leads us along life's way. And when this occurs, we immediately realize that we are right about him being genuine and generous, approachable and welcoming. As a result, we will never be found inadequate or wanting. To know Yahowah in this way, to rely on God as Daud does, is to be bold and adventurous, living life to its fullest while proclaiming the truth without hesitation. I know this not only because Yahowah inspired Daud to say it, but because I've experienced it. In the 22 years that I've openly exposed and condemned religion and politics, I have never encountered an unresolvable circumstance, never fallen into an unfavorable situation, never been dislodged from the truth, never lost control or failed. Striving to be right with Yah enables all of this. It has been the most rewarding and enjoyable part of life, as it was with Dowd before us. Therefore, Larken, it is reasonable and rational as a consequence that, my attitude and thinking, Labeni, my inclination and disposition, my judgment and approach, my character and nature, my internal resolve and thoughtful response, are joyous, samak, are upbeat and happy, elated and content. What's more, Wah, the manifestation of power which is abundant and valued within my persona, Kabod Eni, the glorious and rewarding divine presence within me, expresses his joy over this enormously favorable and uplifting situation and outcome. Jill sings and shouts as a result, calling out in jubilation, utterly delighted in this situation. 155 inches addition, moreover and furthermore, my herald, proclaiming the good news regarding my physical body, basar, my pronouncement and positive news regarding my corporeal human, and animal nature, and the substance which sustains that life, lives and abides, shaken, dwells and remains, camping out for a considerable period of time, with confidence, labitach, safely and securely, without any concern, through trusting and relying, from betach, to trust and rely with confidence and be bold. Living without fear. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:9. Imagine doing something so worthwhile, so meaningful, that God, himself, not only knows what you have accomplished but is overjoyed at the result. This is Yah's rightful response to his son's commitment to fulfilling the Mikra. By robbing the world of everything Dowd contributed to our lives to lionize the Dionysian caricature of Jesus Christ, Peter, Paul, and pals transformed the Passover lamb into an anti-Semitic monster. To confront this, Dowd leveled a broadside against the Gnostic nature of Christianity and Judaism. The argument that Paul used to rob Yahowah, his Torah, his covenant, his people, and his Mashio of their relevance was to opine that they were of the flesh, which, from the Gnostic perspective, was corruptible and evil. In Judaism, God is incorporeal and, therefore, unassociated with anything material, such as a sun or a right hand. According to the rabbis, and in direct contradiction to Yahowah, Hashem cannot manifest an aspect of his nature through fire, nor can he have eyes or a voice. He cannot return, because it would have been impossible for him to have been here. But then again, with the Haredi afraid of the sciences and still stuck in the past, the potential of E equals MC2, where matter is a diminished form of energy, eludes them. 156 Paul would then claim that, by contrast, his faith was spiritual and thus believable and worthy. He imposed his errant perceptions on Abraham and Dowd to make his point. Unfortunately for Paul, and those who foolishly believe he spoke for God, the flesh isn't evil. Basar, even when scribed as a noun, is still defined by its verbal root. Written identically as basar, it speaks of a herald proclaiming the good news, something listeners should receive positively. During Dowd's initial life, Shabuw'ah was his basar, herald. Then came Ethan, who scribed the 89th Mizmor in Dowd's honor. And while the prophets all spoke of him, especially Yashar, Dowd would not be heralded again in the fashion of basar until Yada Yahowah. The truth is finally being told regarding what the Messiah volunteered to achieve on our behalf. Therefore, we are fully attuned to the role Dowd's basar, corporeal body played in the fulfillment of Passover. Since Dowd and his herald are correct regarding the basar, then Peter and Paul were not only wrong, but Christianity's faulty foundation crumbles with this basar pronouncement. As is the case with everything in this debate, trust and reliance, indeed, confidence, is a product of knowing and understanding insights such as this, while faith attempts to bridge the credibility gap when a believer is ignorant and irrational. The reason Yahowah inspired Dowd to share this with us is so that we could replace one with the other, and like his prophet, be right about God. While this was now an exceedingly inappropriate place for Peter to have begun his citation, by doing so, rather than realizing that the entire psalm had been about Dowd and his relationship with Yahowah, the faithful are fooled into believing that David was speaking prophetically of the Christian Jesus and referring to him as the Lord. I kid you not. 157 For David speaketh concerning him, the context would make him Isau, Jesus, I foresaw the Lord always before my face, for he is on my right hand, that I should not be moved. Acts 2:25 KJV, therefore did my heart rejoice, and my tongue was glad, moreover also my flesh shall rest in hope. Acts 2:26 KJV. Or if you prefer the more literal rendering. 4. Gar, because, David, delta, a placeholder for Dowd using the Greek transliteration Dawid, said, Lego, declared, of, Ice, him, autos I foresee, proao, the Lord, kappa omega, placeholder for Kurios, the Lord and Master, in front of, Enopian, and before, me, ego, always pa, on my behalf, dia, because, hoti, from, ek, out of, his right hand, dexios, authority, I will not be, me, shaken or swayed, selumai, be overthrown or distressed. Acts 2:25. Therefore, dia, my heart, cardia, rejoices euphranomai, celebrates, and my tongue, glossa, speech, delights, agalau, that also, et, my flesh, sarcos, will abide and endure, kataskinu, live, as a result of, epi, a confident and trusting expectation, elpis. Acts 2:26. This is a tragically misappropriated and misleading paraphrase of Psalm 16:8-9. If you recall, in Acts 2:22-24, the rock was cited claiming that every Jew knew all about the miraculous nature of Jesus. So now, by saying that David spoke concerning him, Daud's assessment of his relationship with Yahowah was fraudulently projected upon the Christian misnomer. This cannot be attributed to a careless mistake by either Peter or Luke because they have bragged about the Spirit providing them with the ability to be conversant in many languages which would have included Hebrew. So, they were without excuse. It is Yahowah's name, not Adonai, my Lord, which is scribed in the Psalm, and 158 verified by the Dead Sea Scroll catalogued as 11 QPS. Therefore, Peter deliberately lied when he claimed that this spoke of his Lord. And as we have just read, and throughout his Mizmor, Daud has consistently referred to God by his one and only name. I intensely desire to firmly place, Shabuw'ah, Yahowah, Yahowah, before me, la nejdeni, always and continuously, consistently and perpetually, tamid. It is true that, ky, as a result of, min, me being right and my orientation on the correct side as the right hand, yamin eni, I shall neither be shaken nor fall into an unfavorable or unresolvable circumstance, nor will I slip up and be found inadequate, balmot. Psalm 16:8. Therefore, la ken, my attitude and thinking, le beni, are joyous, samak. What's more, wa, the manifestation of power which is abundant and valued within my persona, karbowed eni, expresses his joy over this enormously favorable and uplifting situation and outcome, Jill. In addition, af, my herald, proclaiming the good news regarding my physical body, basar, lives and abides, shaken, with confidence, la bitach. Psalm 16:9. And therein is how the Christian New Testament deceives. By removing citations from their proper context, misquoting and misapplying them, the likes of Peter, Paul, and Pals have tricked readers into believing things about Jesus which apply to Daud and his relationship with Yahowah. Robbing the Messiah, and Son of God of his due to pay tribute to a religious myth, is among the most egregious and deadly crimes ever committed by men. It was the first of two steps that led to the malignant myth of 159 replacement theology. After replacing David with Jesus, they would substitute Gentiles for Jews. Daud's statement is so clear that it could not have been misconstrued and misappropriated by accident. This was deliberate and fraudulent, and yet, the lie is essential to the Christian faith. And the religious malfeasance does not end here. The proposition, I foresaw the Lord always before my face, will be extrapolated to convey something astonishingly sinister by the time we reach Acts 2:35. The bad boys of Christendom were just getting warmed up. Peter and Paul were of like mind when it came to plundering David to substantiate Jesus. For example, Paul is recorded saying, now when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep, he was buried with his ancestors and his body decayed. Acts 13:36, methinks this proves that the principal author of the Christian New Testament was wrong. By way of contrast, KY, emphasizing this point while exposing the contrary position, you will not abandon your association with, lo azab, you will not neglect, reject, forsake, or desert, never releasing, kal imperfect, my soul, nipesheni, my consciousness, my inner person, character, and personality, with regard to Shaul or Shaul, la Shaul, by approaching Shaul or on behalf of the goals of Shaul, never allowing, lo Nathan, never offering or giving, not permitting or surrendering. Kal imperfect, your set-apart one, chased otter, your dedicated and loyal one, your special and unique individual, adjective singular, to see, ra, to look upon, to experience, to gloat about, or to find pleasure in, corruption or degradation, shakath, what it is like to be corrupt or corrupted, useless or ruined, marred or blemished, dishonest exploitation or fraud. Especially in association with the slime and the 160 dungeon and pit in which such corrupt and ruinous captives are destroyed. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 16:10. This was written 1,000 years in advance to invalidate Christianity as well as Judaism. Daud is not dead or buried. What is particularly illuminating about this statement is that by referencing it, Paul inferred that it was divinely inspired. And yet, By misappropriating it for Jesus, Paul undeniably proved that he should not be trusted. When we are alerted to the realization that Daud's soul fulfilled matzah by carrying our guilt into Shaul and then celebrated by Purim when the Spirit released him to come home, we find affirmation of the Zarah's role in the Mikra in these words. A great treasure was squandered to embellish a myth. Paul went on to say, so it is also stated elsewhere, you will not let your Holy One see decay. Acts 13:35. Let's never lose sight of the realization that Shaul and Shaul are synonymous for a reason. One leads to the other. Luke, aware of Paul's twisted portrayal of Psalm 16, did his mentor proud and had Peter endorse the same myth. Because thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. Acts 2:27, or because, hoti, my soul, psyche, consciousness, will not, be utterly forsaken and totally abandoned, katalipo, be left behind and deserted, in Hades, the abode of the dead. Neither, will your set apart and dedicated one, Hosios, loyal and faithful, undefiled and pure, be allowed, didamai, to see, porau, experience, decay and decomposition, diaphthora. Acts 2:27. 161. The inference Peter and Paul were making at Daud's expense was that David's body rotted in the grave while Jesus did not suffer that indignity. However, the prophecy was addressing Daud's nipesh, soul, not his basar, body. Therefore, the authors of the Christian New Testament were deliberately deceiving the faithful to promote their religion. And it is obvious. Therefore, by contrasting the Mizmor with the Book of Acts, this becomes a debate between relationship and religion, between right and wrong, between Daud and Shaul, between the Torah and New Testament, and between the Covenant and Christianity. God is on Daud's side, which is why Team Twistianity had to misquote him. Forewarned is forearmed. Religion leads to death and destruction while Daud's way leads to renewed life. It is the reason this Mizmor was written. Let us never forget that Daud spoke of what he and his father would achieve by fulfilling the Modium together. You have made known to me, Yada Yahowah, you are my source of understanding, you reveal information and instruction to me, you enable me to be aware and perceptive such that I am acquainted with, reveal, and experience, the way to, Arak, a path, manner, conduct, and route to travel which leads from this place to, life, living a bountiful, blessed, favorable, and prosperous existence, nourished, restored, and renewed, from to live and remain alive, with life restored and sustained. There is total satisfaction and contentment in the abundant, sober, there is complete and abounding, transcendent joy, simcha, sublime delight with an uplifting cheerful attitude, favorably entertaining the senses, associated with your presence, Ethpana Otta 162, through your appearance and in association with your face. The pleasure of being accepted, name, the benefits of being considered favorably and becoming acceptable, along with the melodious contentment and satisfaction, by being right with you, Bar Yaminota, with my orientation on your right side, with my right hand in yours, and with me looking east in the morning toward you as the sun rises, from Yaman, having chosen to be right, is glorious and forevermore, Netzach, is splendid and unending, producing everlasting status and permanent prominence. Mizmor, lyrics to be sung, Psalm 16:11. This was written in first person by Daud about his personal experience with Yahowah while transitioning from Matzah to Bikurim. It is the greatest moment of his life. Anyone projecting his great achievement onto someone else is destined to engender his father's wrath. Since one would have to lie to make this about Jesus, it is not about him. Thou hast made known to me the ways of life, thou shalt make me full of joy with thy countenance. Acts 2:28. A literal translation does not resolve the problem of pretending that this somehow applies to the Christian myth. Reveal and make known to, Eurizo, provide the information needed to understand and thereby expose to, me, ego, the way, hodos, path, road, and journey, to a complete and fulfilling, pleru, full and abundant, life, zoe, of joy and gladness, euphrosyne, cheerfulness and gratitude, in proximity to, meta, in association with, your presence, prosopon. Acts 2:28. After serving as the Passover lamb and then carrying our guilt into Shaul to perfect us, Daud was celebrating firstborn children with his father. The promise of the sevenfold enrichment and empowerment of Shabuw'ah 163 would soon follow. And so that is something to Towrah about. To accept Yah is to be right. To know Yah is to live. To be with Yahowah is to be joyous, satisfied, and content. We would have to search long and hard to find a more fitting proclamation to refute the likes of Paul. We could read this 1,000 times and never grow weary of what it reveals. And yet by contrast, there is the swamp of grotesque corruptions known as the Christian New Testament. It is filled with deliberately convoluted statements like these written by Luke, and yet, it is by a factor of 1,000,000 to 1 more popular than Yahowah's prophets. One of three things is true: Shimon agreed with Shaul and wrongly attributed something Dowd wrote about himself and his relationship with Yahowah and projected it onto Isau, making the rock a co-conspirator. Second, Luke, Paul's apologist and propagandist, put these words in Shimon's mouth to support his mentor, making Peter a patsy. Or third, the entire Christian New Testament is a work of fiction such that it was contrived from beginning to end, no more credible than the Odyssey. And frankly, since it is so far from the truth, so inconsistent with Yahowah's testimony and inflammatory, so convoluted and contradictory, so poorly written and unconvincing, should you be wondering where to cast blame for this deliberate and debilitating deception, you may want to ponder the third possibility. Our excursion into the bowels of the Christian New Testament has thus far provided nothing to convey the Torah's presentation of Shabuw'ah. And yet, by considering how its authors convoluted Yahowah's intent by misquoting him, we have learned a great deal about the religion perpetrated to rob Jews of their rights and responsibilities, beginning with Dowd. 164 Speaking with one voice, Shaul's, Paul's argument against Dowd on behalf of Jesus is perpetuated by Shimon, Peter. Unfortunately for them, regurgitation does not make vomit any sweeter. Gentlemen, Andros, brothers, Adelphos, it is possible, existy, permissible and obligatory, after all to say, ipon, based on this account, to you in open public discourse, enjoying freedom of speech, paresia, without any concern or fear, with regard to, pros and concerning, Kiri, the patriarchs, founder and forefather, David, delta, placeholder for Dowd, a Greek transliteration for Dowd, that, hoti, he both died, teliatau, his life is finished and has come to a close, and was buried, thapto, and his tomb. Numa, grave, exists, Amy, and can be identified, among, us, even until, Akri, this, hautos, day, himera. Acts 2:29. Being, hyparcho, therefore, a prophet, prophets, and knowing, oida, that, hoti, theos, theta sigma, swore, omnuo, an oath, porkos, that from out, of the fruit, darpos of his loins osphes, would sit, katizo, upon, epi, his autos, throne, thronos, he foresaw, proao, and spoke, laleo, about, piri, the rising up and standing upright, anastasis of the Christen, Cairo new, placeholder for Christen, which became Christ, because namely, hoti, he was not, out, left behind and abandoned so as to remain, katalipo, forsaken and deserted, at, ice inside and within, Hades, the abode of the dead, nor, out, did his flesh, sarx, physical human body, see, hoau, experience, decay and decomposition, diaphora, corruption. Acts 2:30-31. Considering that he is the Son of God, our Messiah and Savior, it is hard to believe that Peter, Paul, and Luke were this overtly committed to killing and burying David. There is nothing they could have said that would have been more irritating to his father, who just so happens to be God. 165 Fortunately, we know better. Yahowah said the opposite regarding his son. Nonetheless, Christianity is hell-bent on perpetrating this myth no matter how many suffer and die in the process. Not that we need more reason to bury this nonsense, there is no tomb ascribed to Dowd. And his body, while relevant as the Passover lamb, is meaningless in every other way. Dowd's soul is the only thing that matters, it is the same with us. Remember? By way of contrast, you will not abandon your association with my soul, Yepesheni, my consciousness, with regard to Shaul, never allowing your set-apart one to see corruption or degradation, Shakath, what it is like to be corrupt or corrupted, useless or ruined, dishonest or associated with the slime pit in which such corrupt and ruinous captives are destroyed. Mizmor 16:10. The apostle's argument was predicated upon a false premise. It was advanced by proposing a citation that did not apply, so it was misappropriated and misquoted. And this is just in the hypothesis stage of the delusion. The prophecy in Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7, to which the rock is alluding, does not predict the arrival of a Messiah who would be known as Christ. It does not speak of Jesus. Instead, just like the misappropriated Psalm, 2 Samuel 7 is all about Dowd, David, from beginning to end. This sweeping prophecy opens with Yahowah explicitly speaking to Dowd and then it concludes with God directly addressing his son once again. In the middle, Yahowah speaks to us of Dowd. Other than the conduit of this proclamation, Nathan, and the one offering it, Yahowah, no other name is mentioned. It came to pass when the king sat down and relaxed in his home because Yahowah had given him 166 comforting respite from his adversaries, 7-1, that the king said to Nathan, the prophet, please look around. I live in a house of cedar, but the ark of God sits within curtains. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:2. So Nathan said to the king, choose to go and do all that is in your best judgment for Yahowah. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:3. But then that evening it came to be that the word of Yahowah came to Nathan. He conveyed, 7-4, go and tell Dowd, my co-worker, that this is what Yahowah says. Why should you build me a home to live in? 7-5. Indeed, I have not lived in any house since the time that I lifted the children of Israel out of the crucibles of oppression in Miraim, even to this day. I have existed going about in a tent dwelling. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:6. Anywhere along the way, that I have journeyed with the children of Israel, did I say a single word to any of the tribes of Israel, my people, Israel, whom I fed, asking, why not build me a house of cedar? Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:7. Therefore, say to my associate, Dowd, this is what Yahowah of the spiritual implements says, I took you from the sheepfolds, from chasing after lambs, to be the leader over my people, over Israel. 7-8. And I have been with you wherever you traveled. I have cut off all of your enemies, removing them from your sight, and I have made your name great, comparable to the names of the greatest on earth. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:9. Furthermore, I will appoint a place for my people, Israel, and I will plant them there such that they may dwell in this place of their own and never have to move again. Neither shall the son of evil afflict them 167 any more, as will have been the case. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:10. And since the time that I instructed the judges in conjunction with my people, Israel, I have created for you a reprieve from all of your enemies. Moreover, Yahowah is boldly and publicly announcing for you that, indeed, he will act, engaging with you to create a family and home. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:11. When you will have laid down your life, Washakab, in association with your ancestors, Ethab-otter, I will rise up and take a stand, Qum, to bring to fruition what you have sown, Zerah, without hesitating nor delaying, Achar, your approach to providing the way to the benefits of the relationship, Asher. This shall be extracted and withdrawn, then delivered out of, Yatsamin, a small particle of your physiological nature, Ma. Then, Wah, I will establish, Kun, his reign over his kingdom, Eth-Mamlakahu. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:12. I am interrupting the flow of this prophecy regarding Dowd because I want you to appreciate something that has taken me years to fully comprehend. The verb male was scribed in the imperfect conjugation. Therefore, it cannot be addressing something which is over, such as Dowd's previous existence. In the imperfect, male speaks of an everlasting fulfillment, thereby addressing Dowd's eternal reign as King of Kings. After Dowd's relaxing intermission between phase 1 and 2 of his lives, with Shakab scribed in the perfect, thus indicating that his rest is now over, Yahowah intervened in the course of human events to Qormeth Zerah, establish what Dowd has sown. Zerah speaks of seeds that, when planted, take root and grow. It serves as a metaphor for the tens of thousands of thoughtful words this man wrote on behalf of fulfilling the modim. 168. To do so, Dowd would need a body, which is why Yahowah extracted a small particle of his physiological nature. In this regard, the primary meaning of mal is not viscera but, instead, a minute, exceedingly small, particle which comprises something much larger. He is speaking of Dowd's DNA. Yahowah is not doing this after Dowd but instead without hesitating or delaying. Such is the primary meaning of Achar derived from its verbal root. And it is Asher which brought us to this place, to this prophecy, and to this understanding over the course of the past 22 years. More than anyone who ever lived, Dowd embodies the way to the benefits of the relationship. Qatsyr is the operative term of the Exodus. It means to withdraw, to extract, and to deliver. It does not speak of a person's seed, in the sense of sperm, gushing out of his manhood. And this time, working with his father, Dowd would be withdrawing our guilt. The third coming of Dowd may also be manifest, not only through the return of his Nepesh, soul, but also by reconstituting his physical corporeal nature through DNA. If so, this manifestation of the Messiah will not only have Dowd's authority and personality, but his appearance as well. And while I may not be personally enchanted by the implications, in that I'd like to make some judicious improvements on my current model, adding a few inches in height, muscle tone, better knees and eyes, I'd be delighted if my wife entered heaven looking as she does. Although, I suspect she'd opt for a healthy spine and a slightly greater stature. Far from dead and buried, rotting away in his grave, the returning Messiah, Son of God, and King of Kings, will be Dowd. And that is why Yahowah is now speaking of him to us, telling us what they will accomplish together. 169 He, himself, shall re-establish and restore a home for my name. and I will fashion and form the place of honor of his kingdom as an eternal witness forever. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:13. I, myself, will be a father for him, and he shall be my son. So, when that which is perverted and twisted is associated with him, I will correctly reciprocate and argue on his behalf, deciding with him to chastise with the scepter of this man, and by assaulting so as to end the lives of the children of Adam. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:14. Then my steadfast love and enduring mercy shall not be taken away from him in the manner that I rejected it, being associated with Shaul, whom, to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, I removed, abolishing before your appearance. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:15. Moreover, your house will remain established, verified, and true, and your kingdom and reign will exist forever as an eternal witness in association with my presence. Your throne and place of honor shall exist and be established forevermore. Shabuw'ah, 2 Samuel 7:16. Consistent with all of these words and everything within this revelation, Nathan correctly conveyed them to Daud. Shabuw'ah, listen to him, 2 Samuel 7:17. Once again, Yahowah revealed something exceedingly important, and the religious have sought to convolute it to serve their perverted interests. That which Peter, Paul, and Luke took from Daud to make their arisen appear worthy became part and parcel of Christianity, demonstrating that our assessment continues to be accurate, and that Peter, Paul, Luke, and the Roman Catholic Church conspire to concoct this medley to take 170 what was said of Daud on these occasions and apply it to Isau Christen, Jesus Christ. Shimon's incredulous monologue resumes with another variation of the Church's misnomers. This Isaun, iota nu, placeholder for Isaun, Jesus, whom Theos, theta sigma, placeholder for Theos, God, raised up, anistamai, caused to be restored to life and stand upright, which all, of us exist as, ami, witnesses, martyros, spectators and observers who can testify based upon their experience. Therefore, is the right hand, dexia, the authority and power, of Theos, theta upsilon, lifted up and exalted, ipsu. He also, promised, epangelia, the holy, hagen, pneuma, pi nu sigma, placeholder for pneuma, spirit, who is received and acquired, lambano, from, para, the pater, pyro sigma, placeholder for pater, father, which, you all, su, have also, kai, seen, blepo, and heard, akuo. Acts 2:32-33. There was no one named Isaun. The person being addressed in the prophecy was Daud. Further, the Passover lamb's body was bludgeoned, discarded, and incinerated. No one in this alleged audience laid eyes on a risen Isaun. Fact is, those exposed to the post-Bikurim presentation of Daud's Nipesh did not recognize him, negating this claim. Further, Daud is the right hand of God, not Isaun. More than this, the claim is preposterous. Had everyone in Jerusalem seen a dead man come back to life, one Rome had publicly crucified, it would have been front-page news in the Jerusalem Post. Jews and Romans alike would have been tripping over themselves to worship him as a god. Moreover, if everyone in Peter's audience had seen such a thing, there would have been no reason for this diatribe to have occurred. 171 No man has seen the Ruach Kodesh, and it is certain that those maligning Daud had not heard from her. I do not think that these clowns could have messed this up any worse, even if that had been their intent. The Ruach Kodesh, set-apart spirit is, as her title denotes, set apart from Yahowah. She is part of God projected into our frame of reference and represents the more feminine and maternal aspects of Yahowah's nature. She is not, however, a separate person or involved in religion. The Greek hagizo, which is typically rendered as holy, denotes religious implications. In addition to the Holy Ghost, Christianity sports a Holy Catholic Church. Holy Bible, a Holy Father, the Holy See, a Holy Mother, the Holy One, a Holy Trinity. Holy Water, Holy Baptism, and the Holy Grail, in addition to Holy Communion to name a few, even a Holy of Holies and Holy War fought over the Holy Land. They even celebrate Halloween. The New World Encyclopedia states, the word holy denotes the presence of sacredness in an object, being, person, place, or idea. It can also indicate an experience of numinosity, all-inspiring and imbued with sacredness. It is often ascribed to saints, gurus, times or places. Thomas Aquinas defined holiness as a virtue by which man's mind applies itself and all its acts to God. The origin of the word holy comes from the 11th century Old German Hulis and Old English hole meaning holly as in the holly tree, considered a sacred plant to both pre-Christian Celtic and Roman worship. To hold holy became to be holy, and then to make holy, as in to sanctify. The concept of being set apart is as central to the covenant as religious notions like holy are opposed to it. At best, holy conceals and corrupts this message, and it 172 replaces God's terminology with man's. Worse, it applies attributes to saints, objects, relics, and the Spirit which are completely inaccurate. But the story gets darker because holy has a satanic past. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, holy was originally used to venerate heathen deities in Old Norse. In the Dictionary of Mythology, Folklore, and Symbols, holy in practically all languages was derived from the divinely honored sun. Forlong's Encyclopedia of Religions says, Holi is the great Hindu spring festival held in honor of Krishna as the spring sun god, and a personified woman called Holi. Hili, which is the German pronunciation of holy, means sun's ray and halo, combining the religious and scientific symbols for the sun god and man. It is then little wonder religious types are wont to place these pagan images over the heads of their saints. As confirmation of this, J.C. Cooper in his Illustrated Encyclopedia of Traditional Symbols, writes, nimbus, a halo around a saint's head replete with a sunburst, halo, and aureole, a heavenly crown of radiant light or corona worn by saints, were originally indicative of solar power and of the sun's disk, and hence display an attribute of sun gods. Since so many of man's religious words, such as church, which is an adaptation of Circe, pronounced similarly to church, representing the sun goddess who was the daughter of Helios, come from Germanic sources, it is instructive to know that Hili and Heilig, the German equivalent of holy, were derived from Hel. In Bell's new pantheon, Hel was a Saxon, Prussian and North Germanic idol. So, it is safe to say that at best, holy is wrong in that it misses the point, and at worst, holy leads us in the wrong direction. The closest Hebrew word, choli, is typically transliterated as holy and means severe plague and 173 chronic sickness. Shimon, being a Jew, should have known better. At this point, the rock would have us believe that the beloved Son of God, the Messiah, the past and future King of Israel, Yahweh's firstborn and chosen one, his shepherd and the branch, the great prophet and psalmist, and our Savior, did not get into heaven. If so, then no one will ever be allowed in. For, indeed, David, delta, placeholder for the Greek transliteration Dawid, did not, ascend, anabaino, rise and go up, to, ice heaven or anos, but, himself, autos, said, lego, said, ipon, Lord, kappa sigma, placeholder for kurios, Lord, my, ego, Lord, kappa omega, placeholder for kurio, Lord, sits and resides, kathami, lives and remains, out of, my, ego, right side, dexios, right hand of power and authority, Acts 2:34, until, hos, I put, tethami, your enemies, ekthros, as a footstool, hypopodion, for your feet, podos. Acts 2:35. The initial declaration, that David did not ascend to heaven, is so far from the truth, so insulting to Yahweh, so demeaning of his beloved, so negating of the covenant, and so dismissive of the mode Mikre, by stating it publicly, and then writing it down. Peter and Luke earned a long stay in Shaul, L. Joining them will be the church fathers who have opined that the Lord speaking of my Lord proves that there are multiple persons in the Godhead and that Jesus must be in heaven instead of David. Stupid is a common denominator among Shaul's inductees. Just for the entertainment of it, I would ask those promoting these lies, if we are to suppose that Dowd is speaking in the first person, who is it that is saying until I put your enemies as a footstool for your feet? With Dowd as the speaker rather than the subject of the Psalm, 174 wouldn't that make Dowd more powerful than the Lord? How is it that the full cadre of Christian theologians over this vast chasm of time have not been able to perceive that the conclusion of the sentence negates any possibility that it was spoken by David of Jesus? Are they all complete ignoramuses, or is their problem a total lack of integrity? Based upon the introduction alone, it is apparent that the psalm was written about Dowd, as was the case with the magnificent 89th Mizmor. And it was likely composed by someone in Dowd's court because he addresses the king as Adon-Eni, my lord, as is common even today. However, after the introduction, the Mizmor is presented in Yahweh's voice as God speaks to and of the king in second and third person, as he did through Nathan in Shamuel, 2 Samuel 7. A psalm, Mizmor, a poetic song with melody and words, regarding, about and concerning the approach of, Dowd, the beloved. Yahowah, a transliteration of as directed in his Torah regarding his hire, prophetically announced in advance of it occurring, Naam, declares and predicts through a prophet, participle masculine singular, concerning the approach of, regarding and to, my Lord and my upright one, a down-any, my master and authority figure, used as a sign of respect by a subordinate, you have chosen of your own accord to actually dwell, Yashab, under the auspices of free will. You have decided to genuinely live and remain, Cal imperative, a genuine expression of volition in the second person regarding living and dwelling, at my right side as my right hand, la yamineni, with my power and authority, as an eternal witness to the restoring 175 testimony, add, continuously and forever, into perpetuity as a source of the reconciling message. I will place, Seth, I will set, Kal imperfect, your enemies and those who discount you, Oy otter, your foes who are openly hostile to your status and opposed to your position, displaying animus and rancor toward you, as, la, your foot, regel otter, stool, hadam, from an unused root meaning to stamp upon and tread underfoot. Mizmor, Song, Psalm 110:1. This was written by a prophet, and most likely by either the aforementioned Nathan or Ethan, who brought us the 89th Mizmor. It reveals what Yahowah said to him regarding Daud, whom the prophet, after introducing him, refers to as either a down any, my lord, or down any, my upright one. Either interpretation would have been a common and appropriate title to use when addressing a person of some status, like a king, whom the writer knows and respects. Regardless of how it is transliterated, it would not only be inappropriate for the prophet to refer to Yahowah as my lord, the statement is addressing Daud, who is the right hand of God at his right side. It literally reads, La Daud Mizmor Naum Yahowah La Down Any, to Daud, a psalm Yahowah announced prophetically of my Lord. And from there, Yahowah begins his pronouncement by reinforcing the message he conveyed in the 89th Mizmor, saying to Daud, you have chosen of your own accord to actually dwell, Yashab, at my right side as my right hand, La Yamineni, as an eternal witness to the restoring testimony, add. We can compare this with what Ethan shared in the 89th Psalm, beside you, and on your behalf, La Otter, to approach you and concerning you, by your side, the Zarawah, protective shepherd and sacrificial lamb, Zarawah, the productive ram who shepherds the flock, 176 the strong arm who prevails because he is effective and capable, fully resolved with the overall ability to accomplish the mission, the remarkably important, and impactful individual of action who, as a leader and fighter is engaged as a shepherd among his sheep, who is fruitful in his ways, especially when sowing the seeds which take root and grow, producing new and productive life while denoting and advancing the purpose of the arm of God, of his shepherd and sacrificial lamb, with tremendous power, courage, character, and awesome ability, Imgabura, with the will to fight and the capacity to perform, who accomplishes what needs to be done, becoming victorious, from feminine of Shabuw'ah, a mighty warrior, valiant soldier, and capable defender, a courageous hero worth noting, will be your strong hand, as Yod Otter, is the means you will use to confidently prevail, applying the force required to firmly establish and boldly overpower, raised up high, room, lifted up as an extension from the source, at your right side as your right hand, Yamin Otter, with your authority and power for having chosen to be right. Mizmor, Psalm 89:13. Therefore, to pretend in the 110th Mizmor that David is the one speaking rather than Yahowah, or that Daud is addressing an undisclosed lord, is ludicrous. Peter's alleged citation not only borders on the illiterate, but it would also have David buried rather than in heaven as a preamble. Then in contradiction of that, he has David playing the role of God, such that the Lord sits at his side while he makes a footstool of the Lord's enemies. If I may state the obvious, not only is Acts 2:34-35 an incomprehensible and inexcusable rendering of Psalm 110:1, it is an embarrassment to Christendom. For, indeed, David, delta, placeholder for the Greek transliteration David, did not, ascend, anabaino, rise and go up, to, ice heaven orenos but, himself, autos, said, lego, said, ipon, Lord, kappa sigma, 177 placeholder for kurios, Lord, my, ego, Lord, kappa omega, placeholder for kurio, Lord, sits and resides, kathamai, lives and remains out of, my, ego, right side, dexios, right hand of power and authority, Acts 2:34, until, hose I put, tethemi, your enemies, ekthros, as a footstool, hyperpodion, for your feet. Podos. Acts 2:35. When it comes to stupid, Luke and Peter have set a new standard. And that is the kindest interpretation that can be made of this drivel, because the most accurate assessment would entail acknowledging their evil intent. To hold this up as evidence prophetically demonstrating that Jesus was divine and that he superseded Daud is pathetic to the point of utter desperation. And to believe that this verbal diarrhea was inspired by God on behalf of Jesus requires a complete suspension of evidence and reason. How is it that over the past 1,700 years, not a single religious scholar has denounced this obvious deception while countless have opined that it validates the Trinity? Is the Christian religion universally effective at incapacitating every believer's ability to think, or are the clerics and theologians in on the scam? While the illiterate and misappropriated, even mistranslated, citation of Psalm 110:1 found in Acts 2:34-35 concludes after massacring the first verse, "I am not one to turn the page when there is much more to learn, when there are false prophets to expose and liars to condemn." The fraudulent repositioning of the 110th Psalm to elevate Jesus over Dowd is something those who love Yahowah must overcome with evidence and reason. This begs the question, why am I the first to point this out? Over the past 2,000 years, there have been plenty of Jews who could read Hebrew and Greek and make the same comparisons. Moreover, they should have been 178 motivated because they were being dehumanized and demonized, subjugated and plundered by the religion built upon these lies. And why, with Jews suffering all manner of calamities at the hands of those who robbed Dowd to create Jesus, didn't a single Jew over this vast chasm of time point out the obvious and acknowledge that Dowd represented everything that was falsely projected on their nemesis? And yet, even to this day, and after billions of hours of study, rabbis are set against acknowledging Dowd as the Son of God, the Messiah, or their Savior for having fulfilled the mode Mikre. As for Dowd, while nearly as flawed as his people, he accomplished three things that constitute 3 lives well lived. He was the most courageous and effective defender of his people, beginning at a young age when he excoriated and then decapitated an arrogant Philistine. He, as a prophet and lyricist, wrote 100 magnificent mizmor and martial enlightening, and inspiring us to this day. And he performed the most laudable and noble act in human history by volunteering to fulfill Pesach and Matzah, leading to Bikurim and Shabuw'ah. It is little wonder that Yahowah will honor him in his third life as more God than king. Returning our attention to Psalm 110, in spite of its repetitive mentions of Yahowah's name and its overt condemnation of Israel's foes as father and son rid the world of Christians, it is the single most quoted Hebrew citation in the Greek New Testament. It is as if Satan is taunting us. So, to set the record straight, as we recommence, it is germane to acknowledge that even in the fairy tales presented in the New Testament, Jesus never touched a scepter or a lance, and did not wield a staff while shepherding sheep. However, Dowd held all 3 in 179 meaningful ways. He ruled over Israel as king upon Zion, and was an effective defender of his people. Yahowah, Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of Yahowah, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his Hayeh, existence, and our Shalom, restoration, dispatches and extends, Shalach, continually reaches out, Kal imperfect third person masculine singular, from, Min, Zion, the signs posted along the way, Zion, your mighty scepter, your fortified staff, and your strengthened spear, Mateh otter, your forceful lance and strong branch, even your empowered tribes, for you to choose to rule over. Dominating and subduing, radar, to express your desire to control and trample, Kal imperative second person masculine singular, your foes who are openly hostile to your status and opposed to your position, Oyab otter, your enemies and those who discount you, displaying animus and rancor toward you, in battle, Markarab, while fighting the war. Mizmor, Song, Psalm 110:2. Yahowah said that he was going to enable this result on Dowd's behalf in the Shamuel, 2 Samuel 7 passage Peter misappropriated early on in his protestations. It is a constant theme throughout the prophets. Dowd is a fighter, the shepherd and the king who constantly battled to protect his people with Yahowah at his side in his battles against Israel's foes. By contrast, even within Christian mythology, Jesus never confronted a militant foe, never tended to a flock, and never ruled a day as king. He did not dominate or subdue anyone. In this next statement, Amotter, your people is used in reference to the family comprised of the children of Israel, not a Gaon church. Your people, Amotter, your family, will be free and abundantly enriched, willing and able, Nidabar, will be liberated and highly motivated, desirous and eager 180 to volunteer and play their part, on the day, Bar Yom, during the time, associated with the beautiful appearance and uncommon splendor, the uniquely majestic and honorable manifestation, Bar Hadar Kodesh, in glorious fashion, instilling respect, adorned in a manner which sets you apart as a person of the highest status, of your physical prowess. Exceptional qualifications, noble character, and unique ability, Shelotter, of your extraordinary endurance and effectiveness, even your enormous wealth, the strength of your troops and your political and military competence, also your ability to prosper through an eternity of time. From, Min, out of, the womb and in love, showing the compassion of a mother, Rechem, the point of origin with great affection and mercy, showing concern for the relationship, your light will dawn, approaching, Miskilata, in the early morning light, your time will approach, transitioning from darkness to light with a renewed vigor, from to ponder the implications of Shaha, being diligently observant while earnestly seeking the truth from the onset, right from the very beginning with, The prosperity and abundance, tal, like the enveloping covering and refreshing nature of the dew, you will be renewed, adorned, and pervasive, from talal, to be wholly saturated and covered of your youth, yalduthota, of the time you were young, your childhood, from yalod, when you were born. Mizmor, Song, Psalm 110:3. In the preceding statement, we were unable to conclude whether Yahowah was speaking of battles waged in the past or yet to come because Daud has and will subdue Israel's foes. However, now we can be certain that Yahowah is addressing his sons' second and third lives. When Daud fulfilled Pesach and Matzah in year 4000 he Nidabar, freed his people and Nidabar, 181 abundantly enriched, and enabled his family. By opening the door to eternal life and then by removing our guilt on Pesach and Matzah, Daud extended the benefits of Bikurim and Shabuw'ah. And so, during firstborn children and the promise of 7, the Son of God was Hadar Kodesh, uniquely honorable and majestic as the most set-apart manifestation of God's glory. To achieve this great victory over death and incarceration, required someone with chale, exceptional qualifications, tremendous physical prowess, noble character, and uncommon capability. And so, from the Rechem, loving embrace and compassionate womb of his mother, a Missaka, new day would dawn. His Missaka, light and enlightenment would bring Tal, great prosperity to the Yalduth, youth entering the covenant family. This is, therefore, the story of Daud fulfilling Pesach and Bikurim for his people to enjoy Bikurim and Shabuw'ah. But is this not also symbolic of the Messiah's return? After defeating Christians, Muslims, secular humanists, progressives, and communists, Israel will finally be free and will flourish at long last. And on this day, the Son of God will be as Eliyahu, Almighty God, as brilliant as the sun. His appearance will be tremendously beautiful and uniquely honorable, as he manifests the ability to lead God's family into forever. The young man chosen and anointed at 8 will shine in the presence of his God and people. We are told on 2 occasions that Daud was beautiful, the most handsome of men, Psalm 45 and 1 Samuel 16. By contrast, even in Christian mythology, Jesus' appearance was never described. Therefore, should I have been correct regarding Mal describing a minute, exceedingly small, piece of Daud's DNA, then we will see him in all of his original glory, just as this psalm attests. 182 This said, Yahowah's perspective on men is different from our own. Daud was beautiful in Yahowah's eyes for many reasons. Among them were his brilliant mind, soaring rhetoric, passion for his people, and exemplary character. I have only seen his words, and yet, after observing them I have come to love him. One of the most effective ways to ascertain the identity of the individual presented in messianic prophecies, such as the one in Yashar, Isaiah 9:6-7, besides the fact that Daud's name is included in most of them, is that he is presented as a Shabuw'ah. Its definition is very similar to chale, physical prowess, exceptional qualifications, noble character, and unique ability. It foretells of a man of extraordinary endurance and effectiveness, who possesses enormous wealth. And as a Shabuw'ah and chale, he will be a warrior, someone who fights to defend Israel, competently leading troops into battle while wielding political and military authority. Daud is this man. Jesus is not. The conclusion of the third statement of the 110th Mizmor speaks of Daud alone. He was born beloved. He is the ultimate recipient of Yahowah's Rechem, love and affection. He was known for beginning his day at dawn, and no one began life as gloriously in their youth as God's Son. He was not only chosen and anointed at 8, in short order, he slayed his people's most belligerent foe. His best songs were written while he was Yalduth, young. Not only did Daud provide an abundance of Mizmor, psalms during his life as God's shepherd and chosen one, but as Yahowah's firstborn and the returning king of the universe, Daud will receive the lion's share of the inheritance associated with the covenant he made possible. While Yahowah made promises to many, there were only 2 to whom he made solemn oaths, Abraham and Daud. And since he has already fulfilled all of his 183 promises to the former, it appears as if Yahowah is ascribing yet another distinction upon the latter. Yahowah, Yahowah, a transliteration of, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, has sworn an oath, having made a solemn promise, Shabat, he has affirmed the truthfulness of his previous statements by meeting the conditions in association with 7, the full perfect third-person masculine singular, and he will never change it, while Onachim, he will not reconsider or relent, and he will not alter his course of action at any time to console anyone, because he has done so without regret, Nephil imperfect third-person masculine singular. You are a royal advisor and supreme leader adorned in a priestly fashion, Otter Cohen, you are a counselor and ruler, the principal officer, serving by ministering, from Kahan, to serve by playing the role of a priest, becoming a priest, and being adorned as a Kohen, forever, La Olam, for the duration of time, with regard to the words of Al-Dibra, according and corresponding to the proper sequence of events which have been communicated through the message concerning, feminine of Debar, the spoken and written word of, Melchizedek, my rightful king, Melchizedek, my royal counselor and advisor and sovereign ruler, from Melech, king, which is from the verbal root Melech, to be the ruler who provides leadership, counsel, and advice with the pronoun suffix y for any, my, and Zadek, being right, correct, acquitted and vindicated, just and righteous, justified and upright. Mizmor, Song, Psalm 110:4. This statement is reminiscent of two others, one from the 89th Mizmor, and the other from Zechariah 3. As it related to the never-ending promise, here are those references. 184 I have established, cutting through separation, Karat, the Berith, covenant for the family and home, Berith, through any Batcha, my chosen one, the person I prefer and have decided upon, La Batcha any. I have sworn an oath, and I will affirm this promise 7 times over, Shabuw'ah, to Daud, the beloved, La Daud, Ebed Eni, my authorized agent and co-worker who serves on my behalf, Ebed Eni. Mizmor 89:3. Forevermore, as an Ad Olam, eternal witness to the restoring testimony, Ad Olam, I will prepare and establish, Kun, your offspring and that which you sow, Zerah Otter. In addition, I will construct a home, Wabanah, for your throne and seat of honor, Qatsyr, on behalf of all generations throughout time, La Dawa Wa Dawa. Selah, pause now and contemplate the implications, Selah. Mizmor 89:4. And now, here is my personal favorite. Accordingly, Wah, my unwavering love, enduring devotion, unmitigated favoritism, affection, and generosity, Kesed Eni, I will never remove from him or withdraw from being with him, Lo Para Minim Hu, because I will never communicate something which is not true nor will I ever contradict, while Lo Shakar, my steadfast commitment to the truth, Bar Imuna Eni. Mizmor 89:33, I will never dishonor or betray, Lo Chol, Barith Eni, my covenant family, Barith Eni, nor will I ever alter, disguise or change, while Lo Shanar, that which has gone forth from, Motza, my lips, Safa Eni. Mizmor 89:34, Echad, there is only one, Echad, to whom I have affirmed the truth by having made a promise affirmed 7 times over, Shabuw'ah, by Kodesh Eni, my uniquely set-apart nature, Bar Kodesh Eni. If not 2 and 185 regarding, Imla, Daud, the beloved, Daud, I will be proven a liar, Kazab. Mizmor, Psalm 89:35. As for Daud also serving in the role of high priest upon his return to anoint the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant on Yom Kippurim, Yahowah dressed down Yahusha to dress up Daud. Please listen, Shama Na. Yahusha, as the high priest, HaKohen HaGadol, as the most important minister serving during the Mikre, you and your loudmouthed associates Otter Waria Otter, you and your wearisome and wicked companions and undesirable countrymen of ill repute, including those who have inhabited this office before you, Ha-Yashab La Pana Otter, who sit in your presence, are individually symbolic, Ky Ish Mofithem, because indeed, Ky, behold, Hine, I, myself, will return and bring, any bow, I will come. Arriving with, my co-worker, Eth Ebed Eni, with my associate, the branch, Zmak, the primary source of growth by reaching out to the light. Zechariah 3:8. Pay attention, because, Ky Hine, the stone, Ha Eben, which, for the benefit of the relationship, Asher, I have placed before, Nathan La Pana, Yahusha, there are 7 eyes representing insightful promises, Sheba Anim, on that single stone, Al Eben Echad. Look and see, Hine, I, myself, will openly engrave, any Parthak, its inscription, Pichuvak High, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, of the spiritual implements, Zaba. Then, Wah, I will remove, Mopsh, I will withdraw, the perversity and depravity, Eth-A1, the willingness to twist, distort, and bend, including the corruptions, of those in this land, Ha-Eres Ha-High, in a single day, Bar Yaum Echad. Zechariah 3:9. 186 Daud is returning with Yahowah as God's co-worker and as the branch. He is the cornerstone Yahowah placed before Yahusha long ago. And what has been written of him on that stone includes the insightful promises to fulfill the Mikre. God, himself, has engraved it and wants us to consider his prophetic inscriptions because in a single day, once in year 4000 year, 33C and again in year 6000 year, 2033, during Chag Matzah and then Yom Kippurim, the A1, perversity and depravity of twisting and distorting will all be removed. So, These related citations answer every question regarding the identity of this individual up to and including Dowd being presented in priestly fashion. Throughout the prophets, Yahowah speaks more about Dowd, and of the promises he has made to him, than any other individual, and by a wide margin. As a direct affront to the most pervasive plague to infect humankind, Christianity, God says regarding this individual that he will not change his mind. This is a stunning rebuke of replacement theology in the very psalm used more than any other to advance this malignant mythology. What Yahowah promised to do for and with his beloved and firstborn son, his chosen shepherd, and Messiah, the King of Kings, the very Zarahwah who fulfilled Pesach and Matzah, cannot ever be taken away from him and given to another. The concluding phrase of the fourth statement has left scholars and theologians bewildered for centuries because they are unwilling to search for the meaning of Hebrew words, especially names, and they fail to appreciate how context dictates the proper way to translate the ideas embedded within the terminology. Since there has never been a Loi who qualifies within this context, Yahowah is addressing the La Olam al-Dibra, eternal testimony and enduring message of the 187 Kohen, royal advisor and supreme leader adorned in priestly fashion who is Melchizedek, my rightful king. Of these, there is only one, Melech Dowd. The issue which seems to stump theologians when translating this is that they are not familiar with the words that comprise the names Yahowah has chosen. There is no priestly order of Melchizedek. Therefore, it is a title Yahowah is using to announce that Dowd is his rightful king. Melechi means my king and Zadok means right. More than for anyone who has ever lived, Yahowah has professed that Dowd is right. Mystery solved. At this point, the prophet, should it be Nathan or Ethan, announces that Dowd, as Yahowah's right hand, will do as God has promised. My Lord and my upright one, Adonai, Downy Eni, the person of authority I look up to as a sign of respect, at your right side and as your right hand, Al-Yamin Otter, who is in the preferred position of authority and influence for having been right, he will strike and actually shatter, Makats, he will pierce and dash, severely agitate and shake up, ultimately crushing, Kal perfect third person masculine singular, during this time, Bar Yaum, in this day, of his king's wrath, Aphu Melech, of the frustration and resentment of his ruler, the righteous indignation of his sovereign counselor. Mizmor, Song, Psalm 110:5. This is a prophet, likely Nathan or Ethan, revealing what Yahowah revealed to him about the coming Messiah, King Dowd. At Yahowah's right hand, Hamashyor will lash out at Israel's foes, especially Christians, Muslims, and progressive and religious Jews. The king is angry, as is his God. And frankly, after reading Acts, who can blame them? 188 Should you be a Christian, this is not good news. To be judged is to be subjected to an unfavorable outcome, particularly now. And to have the man whose life your religion has ransacked, and whose people you have demeaned and replaced as the arbitrator, puts those who believe in Jesus Christ in a very bad position. But do not take my word on this, listen to God. He will execute judgment to defend and to accuse, Dean, he will decide between right and wrong based upon the agreed set of principles, adjudicating by contending and convicting, taking legal action against while debating and disputing, Kal imperfect third person masculine singular, among the Goim, Gentile religions and nations, Ha-Goim, those who are not Jews, the communities of people from other races, cultures and places, filling them, male, putting an end to them, with corpses, Goyah, with the carcasses of dead bodies, from Gawah, to be left behind, feminine of Gawi, non-Israelites. He will strike, mortally wounding, Makats, he will physically impact and dash, slicing up and shattering, the leaders, Rosh, the highest-ranking individuals, especially those who govern at the highest levels, of the greatest nations, Al-Erez Rab, the preponderance of the earth. Mizmor, Song, Psalm 110:6. Methinks Goim did not replace Yahweh. And yet, Goim Christians believe that this Lord, the one killing them and their leaders, will be their very own Jesus Christ. Welcome Twistian zombies to the land of the living dead. Once upon a time, I shuddered when I read statements like this one. But now, I concur with them. The punishment fits the crime. And without recompense, there is no justice. Yahowah will once again engage with Dowd, the returning Messiah, to protect his people and home from a 189 world that has turned against them. It is appropriate and fair. Gentile Christians and Muslims, those who have conspired against Jews, and now socialist secular humanists, communists, and progressives have continued to conspire to rob King Dowd's people of their calling, their land, their rights, their dignity, their freedom, and their very lives. And they have chosen to support human religious and political institutions whose edicts besmirch Yahowah's name and reputation. Their assembly of the United Nations is overtly and overwhelmingly anti-Israel. It is so pathetic, the leaders of nations will invert the truth and embrace Islamic terrorists and misogynists to condemn God's people. If I were to ask you to name a moral and truthful political or religious leader, and give you a month to find one, your list would appear as a blank page. Goodbye and good riddance. And along with this cadre of corrupt souls, we can toss out the myth that the 110th Psalm purports the absurdity that, while David was excluded from heaven, dead and buried, he nonetheless peered into the Christian paradise to praise the lords who had dealt fraudulently with him. It is hard to swallow what the religious have been led to believe.